This hateful rhetoric shouldn't be allowed to be published anywhere. Girl Defined should be ashamed of themselves for attempting to set humankind back in time to conform to made-up beliefs based off of a fictional book about a magical sky wizard.
Everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I am Jen. This is Fundy Fridays, and here on my channel I talk about different aspects of Christian fundamentalism, American conservative politics, pop culture, and gay stuff. Probably the gayest thing we're going to talk about today is me, so it just is how it is, okay? Sorry. We don't always get to have ice cream for dinner. Probably shouldn't make a joke like that. It's too easy for Paul to call me fat. Today we are going to be talking about Girl Defined and a little bit of Paul and Morgan, just because they are such good friends with Girl Defined. You know, they like to fellowship quite often. So later in the video, we will be talking about their recent collab, which this is kind of meta, and I will let future editing Jen hop in to tell you how that went. It was all right. So here we are again. I think this is the 6th, maybe 7th time that I have covered Girl Defined on this channel, and I'm going to be updating you on what they've been up to for the last couple months, because rest assured there is always something cooking in the Girl Defined kitchen. Let's just hope it's not Kristen doing the cooking.
I just ran into a major problem as I was chopping up my broccoli and my tomato and what I thought was my cauliflower head. As you guys saw, I got into it and I was kind of confused. I cut it in half and realized that I did not buy a cauliflower head, but I bought what are these things called? A cabbage head. Couldn't even think of the name.
I've been covering Girl Defined for a long time. You could even say it's my niche. If you've never heard of Girl Defined, first of all, I'm jealous. Second of all, you should really watch my old videos, although some of them are like 5 years old now, but they hold up. You know, they contain a lot of background information that I may or may not cover today. But anyway, the long and short of it, well, I actually don't know if you could consider anything involved with Girl Defined to be short. I guess I should say the tall and skinny of Girl Defined is that they are a ministry, and you know they're a ministry because they beg for money at least once a year. And their team consists of Kristen Clark and Bethany Beal. Sometimes she is referred to as Bethy. That is her name that she wants us to call her. And sometimes their sisters are involved. Sometimes their mother is involved. But they have a huge family, and sometimes they're involved in the channel is what I'm trying to say. They do have a brother who was arrested for DV. They also have another brother who was abused growing up, and he has come forward and brought attention to that fact, and we'll be talking about that in just a minute. They also have a Nazi grandpa. Yeah. So Girl Defined has like a very big family is what I'm trying to say. And they're big also in size too. Everybody is tall in this family. Bethany has like expressed before, you know, that affects her self-esteem and how she views her own femininity. And I just think that's rich coming from her, who is so shameful of anybody who deviates from the gender norm, anybody who wants to express themselves differently, anybody who, you know, has experienced like dysphoria, she's very cruel to. So I'm not saying that I want bad things to happen to people. I just wish that she would be a little more empathetic. I think a better way to say my point would be that Bethy has been kind of denied access to certain parts of femininity because of her size, and I can definitely empathize with that because I am fat and hairy, and I was bullied a lot growing up because I was so manly, and that really has affected my self-esteem to this very day. And I just think that if Bethy would consider what other people go through for a second, she would not be so mean and judgmental when it comes to how other people express their gender identities. And I don't just mean that with trans people, although that is certainly one of the main gripes that I have with Bethy is how she treats trans people. But I think we can all understand what it's like to not fit in, and I think that Bethy really, really just is superficial and self-centered because she can't use her own experience to become a better person. So Girl Defined, they hopped on the scene back in 2014 and have since expanded their empire into making podcasts, books, conferences. They used to do all kinds of conferences. I wonder what happened. Courses, lots of courses, as well as some questionable merch. They are known for their teachings on modesty, so-called biblical femininity, sexual brokenness, bigotry, and judgment.
I've done things with my boyfriends in the past with and without consent. First thing I want to say to you and to any of us who have experienced sexual impurity, which that's me, that's you,
that's everyone.
None of us are perfectly pure, and that's the whole point of why Christ died. Yeah. We are all sexually broken. We're all impure. We all struggle with lust. We all sin and need to repent of that sin before God.
It's different ways.
It's just in different ways.
At this current juncture, they have been made fun of by not just fundy snarkers, but actual mainstream stars like Trixie Mattel, along with countless other big name YouTubers who may or may not have the same interests that we do in this community. And over the years, their content has shifted from modesty tips and Bible verses to for-profit online courses about sex, orgasms, and mental health.
Has good sex become an idol in my life? Has having an orgasm or multiple or becoming orgasmic, does that become an idol in my life?
Well, that is a sentence I never thought I would hear.
Also, make sure to subscribe to Rachel Oates. She is the GOAT. Originally, today's video was just going to be specifically about Bethy's ultimate sex course, or the intercourse, as snarkers have named it, which 5-star name. Love it. Amazing. But then I realized, like, oh, actually a lot of stuff has happened since the last update I did. So I might as well just give it all a go and talk about it at once. I have made 5 official Girl Defined videos, 6 if you count the Ginger Duggar interview with Kristen, and I'm not counting that just for the sake of my sanity. So this is number 6 officially. The last video I did was actually about Kristen and Bethany's brother, Michael, coming forward with allegations of abuse from their mother, Heidi. And I'm not going to recount that whole thing for you here. You can watch my old video. You can read about it on Reddit. He's very, very active on there. You could also watch Cece Suarez's new video about Girl Defined, because she actually got an interview with Michael Mershon, and he lays it all out for us in a very easy to understand way. I just wanted to say, Michael, if you are watching, I believe you. What Heidi did was horrific, and you are so brave for coming forward, especially knowing the backlash that you probably got. And I just wanted you to know that you have an entire community of people who are willing to back you up and who are on your side. And I just wanted to say you are so brave, and I respect you so much. With that being said, let's move on to the next topic. The last time we checked on Girl Defined, Dave was talking on Instagram about his existential crisis. Bethy was shaming secular therapy. And worst of all, she was platforming crackpot sexologists who advocated for violating their child's bodily autonomy for their own twisted gain. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you sit through that again. I know we all lost a few years off our life the last time we had to hear that story. However, I would like to use this moment to draw attention to another moment where Bethy was inappropriate with sexual boundaries around her family. In this Instagram post, someone said, "Is it wrong to have intimacy while your little kid who is sleeping is in the room? We don't have that much space." Bethany said, "If they're sleeping, I don't see the issue. I mean, how have people done it over the centuries?" Eyeball emoji. I'm not going to accuse Bethy of doing that said thing, but the fact that she thought this was like good advice and was willing to share it shows, I don't know, a lack of discernment or something. And this really isn't surprising when you consider the allegations that Michael is saying about Heidi, because there was some overlap there. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But Bethy, do better, because it is absolutely horrifying that you would give advice like that. I think last time we talked, Bethy was on her sex grift content, but I hadn't really had a chance to break it down in more detail. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit today, but it's not the main focus of this video. If you want to hear from other creators who have actually taken the course, I highly recommend Rachel Oates' video. Once again, I just love her so much. She has been making this kind of content, I mean, long before I was on the scene. And then I also did a collab with Tara Mooney, and we talked about Bethany's shift away from purity culture into this sex obsessed realm, and that's a great video, and I highly recommend that as well. So yeah, Girl Defined. We already know they are obsessed with biblical femininity, a very narrow definition that they have learned from their years of upbringing in fundamentalist circles, IBLP circles, Vision Forum circles.
Thank you, Michelle.
And they really, really hate feminism. They refuse to listen to other people from different walks of life, or take in opinions or ideologies that are different than their own, because it's scary and it doesn't feel good. And if they started questioning anything, then it would unravel the whole thing. The reason why I bring that up is because I recently saw this video with this chiropractor who is posing as an endocrinologist. I guess he doesn't officially say that he is. He says he's a hormone doctor. But he went on the Girl Defined show to talk shop with Kristen, and they talked about how men and women are just so different and they are not equal.
For you're dramatically different, and in our society, our culture, even derogatory women say, well, women are so emotional. They're supposed to be.
Yeah, whatever you say, Mr. Clean.
They're supposed to be. That's the way they're created. And if you just look at the hormone pattern, how it affects their brain, how it affects their breast tissue, how it affects their butt, how it affects their big toe, all those things change on them every single week. And for guys, we're pretty straight across all the time. It's pretty simple for us.
That makes so much sense. And it's a little infuriating because one of the lies of feminism, which we're not huge fans of feminism around here, is that it tells us that men and women should be the same, that we should be able to pursue all of the same things in all of the same ways. But you're telling us there are such, our bodies are so different that we should not expect to be the same, nor should we try to force ourselves to be the same.
And since you brought this up, I'm going to bring this up like crazy, because men and women are not the same. We're not equal. For example, let me show you how we're not equal. And this still even pisses conservatives off and stuff like that, which drives me nuts. Once again, if we talk about things that really affect female hormones, men, lifestyle, and things like that are going to really affect their testosterone. Number one thing by far, and I can prove this scientifically, I can show you hundreds of thousands of labs on this.
Also, I think he wanted to fight Kristen's husband. It was a weird metaphor, but here you go.
Psychological stress will destroy a woman's hormones faster than anything. And if I were to attack your husband, his testosterone goes up. If you were to have the stress, your hormones go down. God created men to handle stress, not women. So I'm sorry, ladies, if you try to even keep up with me physically, you will get sick. A man is meant to take that burden.
Yeah, so don't, Girl Defined, I wouldn't listen to just as a blanket statement. But even more so, the people that they bring on their show, sometimes they have some good points, but mostly they are just as wackadoo as Kristen and Bethany. Case in point, when Bethy kept having Francie Winslow on her show, who on her own website says that on a mission trip she quote unquote bought 2 sex workers so that she could take them out for dinner and teach them about Jesus. And now she's got her own sex course, which Bethy may or may not have been inspired by.
I think I used to come to okay, we're going to be intimate or whatever. And I would basically view it all right, Dave, it's your job to make me come alive. And I'm coming these dead, dry bones. And he's all right, how am I going to raise the dead tonight?
Francie is also the reason why in the community we keep saying self-cultivation, because in one interview, she tells Bethy, in order to get ready for a sexual experience, in order to get to know your body better, you should self-cultivate, which is different than masturbation, because somebody else is there. Listen, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. That's a good idea. It's just really crazy coming from Bethy, who is so anti-masturbation, so anti-erotica, but she's like, oh, this lady's telling me it's okay to touch myself, so it finally is. Like, fuck Kristen, I guess. Like, she's over here, like, hating her life and being so ashamed over this totally normal unhealthy thing, and you're over here talking about self-cultivating for all of us to see. Like,
so here's the breakdown, is that we spend a lot of years believing that masturbation is wrong, and so any self-touching is wrong. Don't do it. And there is no scripture that says masturbation is wrong. However, there are lots of reasons to be very cautious about what it is to be involved in that act. And so that is for another conversation. But I think self-cultivation, is what I like to call it, is different than masturbation. Masturbation is touching for stimulus and for orgasm by yourself, for yourself, in a secretive, isolated way. Self-cultivation is a way to get to know your feminine body so that you love it and you think it's good and you like it and you're comfortable with it and you are aware of it and you're educated about what is where and what is down there. I had no education about my body, no idea what was down there. I mean, I hear a lot of women get married, they're like, I didn't know I had a clitoris, the husband doesn't know. And so if you don't know about your body, it's hard to be able to share your body. It's kind of like you have a really special gift, but it just stays in the corner and you never even opened it. And so you can't really share it with anyone because you were too scared of it. And your body is a gift and God has given it to us and we don't have to be scared of it. And so self-cultivation is simply just kind of like self-education. You can think of it that way, getting to know your body. You can touch yourself down there in order to be like, okay, this stroke, this way feels good. And then the point is then you go teach your husband. Yeah. But he can't read your mind. And sometimes in the moment, there's a little bit of like awkwardness and it's sometimes a blessing to him. And this is something you can talk about with your husband. It's not something you do secretly or alone. But self-cultivation is just a word that I like. It's kind of gentle and beautiful, and it's a way to cultivate growth.
It's just totally unfair, especially when you consider how open Kristen has been about the shame that she felt and the humiliation she felt when she would come forward to her parents to confess her masturbation problem. And for the record, there's nothing wrong with masturbation. It's healthy. It's normal. Everybody does it. So it just breaks my heart to imagine young little like teenage Kristen going to her parents and having to confess this stuff and just feeling like such a horrible, horrible person when this was a normal thing.
My struggle persisted though, and I was just so ashamed. For me, my struggle with masturbation was very much lust fueled, fantasy driven. My heart was just fueled with a lot of impure thoughts, imaginations, things maybe I had seen glimpses of, and I would just kind of extrapolate on those in my mind. And so it was definitely not a pure act that I was engaging in. I could never, I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to go tell my parents, just because it was such a weight. It was just, like I said, so much shame, so much embarrassment. And it took me a while to even get the courage to go and tell them. And I remember praying day after day, just like, wow. Oh, I know I need to tell them. I know taking steps toward victory is confessing this, bringing it into the light, getting help, getting accountability. But I was just terrified. And so I remember one day I just decided, I was like, Lord, give me the strength because I don't want to do this. I really don't, but I know it's going to help me. And so I did it scared. And I know that's something that we say a lot when we don't want to do something, when we're so fearful. The enemy wants to keep us trapped in privacy and secrecy. He wants us to feel like we're on an island alone, surrounded by the ocean, that there's no way out. There's no lifeboat. There's no way we could get help. But that's just not true. We have to take sometimes scary steps of confession in order to break the silence, break the darkness, and then get on a path toward freedom. And so that was 100% true for me. And I remember going to our parents, you were probably at the house somewhere, I don't know where, but I remember going to their bedroom door and just knocking and like breathing so heavily. And then them, just saying, hey, can I share something with you? Can I talk to you? And they were like, absolutely, come in. And I remember just sitting on their bed and I couldn't even get the words out. I just started crying, and they were so compassionate and so loving and just tell us what's on your heart. We want to hear. And so I definitely felt like it was a safe place to do that. And I just remember sharing, and, they didn't respond in shock. They didn't respond in like, anything like that. It was just, they were very like, wow, thank you for telling us. We'll definitely be praying for you. We really appreciate that you brought this up, blah, blah, blah. And it was so freeing for me. And although I didn't immediately have victory, it wasn't like a magical conversation. Now all my struggles, all the lust, it all went away. It didn't, but it did help me knowing that I wasn't in that alone. And it was my journey that began toward freedom of now fighting this, not just by myself, but knowing other people were praying for me, that other people knew about it, breaking the silence.
Kristen and Bethany were not given proper sex education. They were not told that this is a normal and healthy part of growing up. And she said that her parents were nice about it, but like they should never have taken it this far. You don't need to be held accountable for anything. You're not sinning. What they should have done is said, that's okay, that's normal, and given her a hug and kiss and tell her to go on her way. Like, it should not have gotten to the point where now it's a part of her testimony of how she conquered her masturbation problem. Like, it's so sad. As much as I feel bad for Kristen in that moment, I also want you guys to know that she is no angel, because Kristen is just as transphobic and bigoted as Bethany. She's just not on the channel as much. So here is a clip of Kristen absolutely getting triggered by baby bibs.
Little tiny baby bibs for babies.
Baby bibs for babies.
It's worth looking at. It's worth taking pictures and posting about it. Like it's appalling. And what I find most disturbing about it were the racks and racks and racks of clothing that were for children, and not even just children, but babies. Sections with onesies, multiple rows of onesies with things on it. And I'll just read a few of the things that I saw that were on the onesies. So cute little onesies with flowers and all the colors. And it says, just be you and feel the love. Another one, big bold letters in rainbow colors, be proud. Let's see, what other onesies? Oh, and then baby bibs too. Baby bibs with all the fun colors. I am proud of you always, with rainbow flags. Little tiny baby bibs for babies.
Gotta love Pride Month. Every summer, you can rely on two things: corporate greed and fundy influencers getting triggered by rainbows.
And so that's what I find the most appalling and the most disturbing, is that not only are adults pushing this agenda, pushing this mindset, but and fully rejecting God altogether and saying we can define ourselves however we want, and we will celebrate that and we will affirm that. We will fight against our own bodies. It doesn't matter what what we're made as, male or female. We will fight against that, and we will be whoever we want to be. So rejecting the body and going with feelings instead. And what's so sad is that these adults who are creating all of these products, obviously, are now pushing this on little children who are already, like, they're young, right? Kids don't know very much. They're young, they're innocent. Hopefully, if they're being told anything truthful, that if they're born a female, they're being told you're a girl, or born a boy, male, you're being told you're a boy. But that's sadly not even happening in so many circles now. But here you have these products that parents and whoever wants to buy as gifts give to young children, these products that are pushing this narrative, this mindset, this way of living that encourages young people. It's basically saying, hey, celebrate this. This is good. And when the loving adults in your life are telling you something's good and worthy to celebrate, something that's beautiful and right and truthful, as a young child, you're going to believe it.
They're grooming the children. They're grooming the children. Yeah, I really don't think I'm going to take lessons on child sexual boundaries from either of you two, because you don't have the best track record. So that was June, and I can't think of anything else. Nothing significant that happened in June of last year. Psych, bitch. Shiny happy people time. Let's go. Same book, different cover.
What is the role of the wife?
So the role of the wife is to submit to your husbands, which, ooh, scary word, submit.
Very scary.
It's a choice to submit.
Oh, yeah. Girl Defined, Paula Morgan, Jill Rodriguez were all featured in Shiny Happy People. Not in the best light, I will admit. But it was satisfying to be a part of history. Girl Defined were not very pleased with this documentary. They, like a lot of evangelicals, felt that it was an attack on Christianity, which it absolutely was not.
Just use discernment and realize like this is a documentary or a docuseries made by non-believers who clearly, like Kristen said, kind of had an agenda with it. Did true things come out that are really important? Absolutely. So let's use this as a conversation starter. But just like these other docuseries that come out about, or reality shows, you know, it's like people want, we as humans like love to see like a big fall from grace, a big failure.
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
sad, but we find so much entertainment and also a lot of self-righteousness in that. Like we are so much better than those people. So I think if you're like, I left the fundamentalist movement, like don't swing to the other side where now you're going to that prideful side again and saying like, I am so much better than them. Like they thought they were so much better. Actually, I'm so much better. I think we can just do the exact same thing that we don't like.
Also, a common occurrence with these evangelicals, these fundamentalists, when they talk about shiny, happy people, they say, oh, this is like a pro-atheist movie. There was no Christians involved in this. They were just doing it for clout. You can Google, it's free, a lot of people, actual significant amount of people who made the documentary and who starred in the documentary are still Christian. I follow most of them on social media. They're still Christian. The fact that you couldn't pick up on that is your own fault.
Felt like the documentary very much was focused on driving
For sure.
the narrative that they wanted to drive, and the agenda and the angle and even the conclusion felt very much one-sided from someone watching it who was involved in some of those things, like talking about IBLP, the Institute in Basic Life Principles.
Despite saying that they weren't involved with IBLP in an official capacity, they tell stories of meeting Bill Gothard and feeling like he was as famous or as powerful as the president.
Growing up in a homeschool family, we were involved in some of those programs. So we did go to some of those conferences. We did attend some of those programs. We were never members. We were never deeply ingrained in the program. We never did any of the curriculum, anything like that. But we did have some involvement. And so watching it, I was like, okay, this is really interesting to see these testimonies, this anecdotal experience of people looking on and saying, okay, this is what it was for me. And then painting that organization in that one particular light as if that was everybody's experience, or as if every homeschool family was involved, or every conservative Christian thought this way. And so I think it's important for us to bring a different perspective and to say, well, we were involved in some of the programs. In fact, did you meet Bill Gothard? Because I remember meeting him once.
Yeah.
Okay. So like even meeting the man, you know, who's like the big bad man for this whole thing, like he was kind of a god in that arena. And I remember feeling that like, wow, you know, he was the leader of the entire program. Like it was like meeting the president is how it felt.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I didn't really care about him personally. I was just like, whatever, it wasn't a big deal.
Painting an organization in a certain light. And what light would that be, Kristen? Could it be that we were painting IBLP as a bad and dangerous and oppressive organization because that's what it was? I don't understand, and a lot of evangelicals did this when talking about shiny happy people. They will say like, well, the Christianity was good, it was the guy that was bad, or they're painting it in a bad light, or they're saying all homeschooling, all Christianity is bad. That didn't happen. I've seen it over 5 times now. They did not talk about that. They showed off the dangerous and educationally neglectful aspects of ATI. You know, the wisdom booklets that only pretend to teach you math and have entire segments about what to do if you are sexually assaulted by a family member and how it's your own fault. They also talked about in Shiny Happy People the rampant child abuse that is not only advocated for, but instructed for parents to do to their children. But we're painting the organization in a bad light. Why are you defending it at all? Even Ginger Duggar doesn't defend IBLP or Bill Gothard. You can do both. You can uphold Christianity and also condemn IBLP. They're not the same thing. I think that they just don't know, well, they're not media literate, but they also don't understand like the implications of what they're saying, which is absolutely horrific. To defend IBLP, to say that there were some good things about it. Honey, it was ruined when she bought it. The whole thing is bad. The leader and his brother sexually abused people and then covered it up. I don't know why it is so important to these people to defend IBLP. And it's even stranger when they sit there and say, oh, we were not involved with this. We only went one time. When their brother is out here on Reddit saying that he went to alert. So what is the truth, Kristen? Bethy? Is this the hill you want to die on?
Yeah, so I think it'll be interesting for us to weigh in on this because we do have a little bit more of a unique angle, and we don't feel to this day like we were traumatized by our experience like so many people are sharing.
I am sick and tired of Bethy and Kristen having a different experience from somebody else, so then they discredit the entire thing. Well, we weren't traumatized. Enough people were. More than if the number is more than 0 of amount of people in your organization who have been sexually assaulted, that's not a good organization. It failed at its job to educate students the second that they started having inappropriate relationships with them. I'm really happy for you that you weren't traumatized by IBLP, but most people were. And that's just something you're gonna have to deal with. Bethy and Kristen also pulled that shit when it came to purity culture way back when in a video they did about Josh Harris, and they said, well, I wasn't harmed by purity culture.
Creating that documentary, I Survived, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, we decided, that's when the conversation kind of started. Why don't we share our experience? So we actually created a video on this YouTube channel called Why I Kissed Dating Goodbye Didn't Ruin Our Lives. So we posted that video just sharing our story and why this book that had seemed to ruin so many people's lives didn't ruin our lives, and why we were still doing okay.
Like, these people do not have empathetic bones in their body. So no wonder they are so judgmental, and it is so difficult for them to see somebody else's perspective, because I think it would break their mind.
Yeah. And just to be clear, because so many people have asked, we did not know any clips of Girl Defined were going to be in it. I had no idea the docuseries existed until like days before it came out. I had no idea Girl Defined was in it. Kristen didn't either. So if people are like, oh, did you know your clips are going to be in it? Like, no, we came to watching this Shiny Happy People docuseries just like the rest of you. Like, we heard of it days before it came out, and then we were like, oh, there's some clips of us in it. I only got head nods in it. I was like this. Kristen got words. I was just like this the whole time. So that was my big moment.
Speaking of clout goblins, I'm never going to let anybody forget that when the Shiny Happy People phenomenon was happening, Paul and Morgan, of course, had their say in it. They were in Shiny Happy People. I believe they gave a 4-hour interview just like I did. They have since made several videos about this, just whining and crying that they were not portrayed the way that they thought they were going to be portrayed. So I bring all this up. Morgan, you would think that it would be Paul all the time doing this stuff, but sometimes Morgan pops off, okay? She was saying that everything can be dramatized, right? And so the example that she gave was completely inappropriate. It absolutely made light of survivors' testimonies. It was completely disrespectful. It was in bad taste, and it was horribly offensive. So I'm going to play you a clip from Jordan and McKay's channel. By the way, please go subscribe, where they react to this Paul and Morgan video. And I just felt that Jordan's reaction was perfect, and it encapsulated what we were all thinking.
I thought to myself, they could come in and make a documentary and get their group of sources and come in any of our churches, any of the solid biblical Christians that are watching this video right now, come into their church and make it look like a cult.
Intense music behind anything, and it sounds crazy.
And pull 5-second clips.
Make a girl be like, and then I had to pee.
Clips, and then say, in this church.
We're just going to sit with what the fuck she just said for a second. How dare you liken the experiences that these women went through to, oh my god, I have to pee. You
Crazy.
Insensitive person. the restraint that I have to not absolutely come for you right now as a victim of child sexual abuse that was covered up by a religion, by religious leaders. You are disgusting, and you're smug ass thinking that you are just the elitist of Christians, and oh my god, everybody, you just feel so bad. Like, I am astounded that that came out of your mouth. That is the least Christ-like thing that I could ever think of saying. That is so insensitive to people who are victims of things that you cannot even wrap your fucking mind around. And then to sit here and be like, oh, wait, so sad. We're not even on the same fucking playing field. I have a lot of patience for the two of you, and I have over the time that we have covered the shit that you've said. This fucking takes the cake. This is disgusting. I don't even have nuance to give to this to make this okay. This is so fucked. Heaven help the two of you. Because what you think is Christ-like is not even fucking close. Go up to one of these victims and say what you just said. I fucking dare you.
Yeah, never forget. Something else that happened last summer that also triggered all of the evangelical snowflakes was the Barbie movie. And while I did enjoy the movie like a normal person, damn near every fundie that I saw, besides Dave, and we will be talking about that, was pissed about this movie. They thought it was a man-hating romp. They thought it was a woke propaganda film. And the complaint I kept hearing over and over and over was just how much they hated this feminist message, which is a little ironic because most of the people that I talk to and the feminists that I associate with thought that the message didn't go hard enough, that it was only scratching the surface level, and that it was kind of basic in that department, which that's, I guess, okay. You know, you got to start somewhere. The fundies, they just couldn't take it. So case in point, Bethy dragged Dave into a video where she was trying to like talk shit about the movie and say, you know, all the stuff that I just said was a woke feminist, blah, blah, blah. And Dave had some like very nuanced and, dare I say, good opinions about the movie.
And then the more I thought about it, the more I appreciated this and the more I read about it too, where it wasn't really trying. I think a lot of conservatives thought, oh, it's just bashing men. And I think that what it was doing was it was more saying like, here's a stereotypical world, you know, Barbie land, and here are some of the impacts on the real world with expectations for women and stuff like that, and here are some of the kind of tropes and stereotypes about patriarchy, and you know, we're going to kind of explore that. What if patriarchy came to Barbie land, you know, at one point in the movie? And so I really like that idea. It was very experimental to me of just like, let's put these stereotypes along with these stereotypes, and let's flip the power dynamic, and then let's see what happens, and then let's flip it back, and then let's like try to come to something that maybe transcends both of those. And I think that filmmakers did try to do that, especially near the end. They tried to, and we can go into some of why.
Yeah, I'm resisting rolling my eye.
You're resisting, okay. But no, I think that
not at you, at like that whole thing.
Wow. Did you notice Bethy there making little faces the whole time because she just can't help herself from acting like an immature, I want to say jerk.
Yeah,
well, way kinder and more generous.
Typical of, I mean, these days it's pretty typical to just have a straight up, here's the power dynamic, here's who's been oppressed, and then let's basically like flip that, and the people who should be leading are the people who have been oppressed. And the movie, I don't think the movie exactly went there in the final analysis. In the final analysis, in terms of what happens in the real world, I don't think that the movie was necessarily trying to say, oh, it would be better if women were in charge of everything.
Well, in Barbie Land, they made that clear. But then
in Barbie Land, they did. But Barbie Land is a very
confusing.
Yeah.
Like they didn't really have a solid answer.
It was a little
like,
convoluted.
Now what? Now what happens to Barbie?
Yeah.
Like,
which that's more exactly what I want to talk about. But so I liked all that. Yeah, I liked all that. All that exploration is fun. The philosophical explorations are fun. Ken was a hoot. He was so funny. And Weird Barbie as well. So those were my two favorite parts, I would say, in the musical numbers. I'm just Ken. It's so funny.
Oh, I wanted so much more of that.
And the Ken story arc too, for his character arc is so, in my opinion, these are things I'll share. These are so, I thought that there were some things that were very well done about that.
I mean, Ken was the best part.
Those are just some of my positives. Yeah.
I really appreciated Dave's takes, and I feel like Bethy just kept trying to change the subject to like get it back to what she was talking about.
Here's the thing though. We've heard these statistics and stuff. Women are outstripping men in so many different sectors in our society, education and careers and stuff. It's like men are very much falling behind. It seems like there's a crisis of identity amongst many men. So there are movements that are sort of capturing a lot of these men that are really stereotypical, that are like the manosphere that I've heard of. I don't know much about it, but it's this sort of idea that if the feminists say this, you sort of say the opposite. Like the feminists say, they have all the power. And so you're like, it's good to have power. You basically just affirm that sort of thing. And there are a lot of groups like that. And there are a lot of guys that treat the women that they're with like that. I mean, very much like, you're here to serve me, either, and in both ways. The weak sort of nice guy approach, where I'm building my life around you and your happiness is the most important thing in my life, and our relationship is the most important thing. That's a very weak position to be in. And just as much as the, jerk version, where it's like, you need to serve me and stuff. But the thing is, it seems to me like that very much exists. Men like that were like that sometimes.
Never in my life would I have thought that a evangelical, let alone the husband of Bethany from Girl Defined, would actually acknowledge the manosphere and acknowledge toxic behavior in men. I'm kind of floored. Like, I can't believe he did that. And it means a lot. And Bethy ruined it at the end.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, like, we had an interview with Nancy Piercy, and you can listen to it. It's a few episodes back, all on the toxic war on masculinity. And I think that that's true. I think that we've swung so far to this side of, like, not just that women want to have equality with men, but they want men have to be like scum and men have to go down. And like Nancy Piercy was saying, like, it's all these jokes, like testosterone is a cancer and we have to basically like weed out men from our, like, men are the problem.
No,
and
it's not.
Like, I think of raising a son, and it's like, I do not want to raise him basically viewing his manhood and his masculinity as a problem.
Oh, I think you'll be okay.
You do know that toxic masculinity doesn't mean that men are toxic. It's a type of behavior that some men exhibit. I actually think that toxic masculinity more involves ways that men are harmed by patriarchy, and this would be stuff like low self-esteem, drug abuse, suicide, social isolation, emotional suppression, difficulty seeking help about abuse that they've suffered because of social stigma. There's a lot of stuff that is hard about being a man, and there's all kinds of social pressures and things that I can't even begin to understand. So that's what we mean when we say toxic masculinity, Bethy. It doesn't mean we hate men or that we believe that, like, little boys should be raised without masculinity. Like, I don't know where you're getting that. I know you talked to that one lady, but, like, that's not a thing. Like, nobody is saying that testosterone is cancer. But I'm trying to not give Dave too much credit because of this video. This is a reel that Bethy made, and it has copyrighted music, so I'm not going to play the actual thing. But, like, what's that about? What do you mean by that? I don't know if he consented to being in this video, like if he even knows that Bethy made this video. All I'm saying is that I really, really hope he did not want to be in that video, because I like Dave and I want him to do better.
I'm just Ken. That's enough. And I'm great at doing stuff.
And now I want to shine a little bit of light on some other areas in which Bethy and Kristen are kind of disentangling, if you will, some of their beliefs. And I thought it would go great off of the tail end of this Barbie clip where Dave was kind of examining his beliefs. But I want you to keep in mind when you're watching this that this is just surface level stuff, because Bethy and Kristen are still very bigoted, and I will talk about that in just a few minutes.
But a big problem for me, like when Dave and I got married, I was so like hyper aware of modesty. So it kind of like the world became almost like everyone was almost like a sexual being first and foremost. Like we are sexual beings, but it almost became like I was hyper aware of everything sexual. So about me even, like I viewed myself like in such a like sexual way that, oh my goodness, if the shirt is too tight, if my shorts are too short, if something like I am just like this walking sexual temptation, or like people are just going to look at me and be like, oh, she's just like sexual, you know? I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I lived in the world. So like even when Dave and I were dating and we were engaged and then we got married, I remember just like feeling the stress of like going into a restaurant and being like, oh my goodness, look, there's a girl there and she's got like a bunch of cleavage showing. It was hard for me to be present and enjoy, because I just kept thinking like, oh my goodness, how can a man be at a restaurant and see the cleavage and not just be like lusting tons? So it was like always felt like this battle, and you know, and he wasn't saying that, I was putting that on him and I was putting that in the world. So my life in the world, my life was almost like this revolving around everything I was against, all the problems in the world, and it was hard to like actually live and enjoy, because oh my goodness, the billboard, oh my goodness, the mail, like all of this stuff, and I almost felt like responsible for having to like keep him from failing and to not make other people fail. And I wouldn't have said that stuff out loud, but it kind of was like like I can remember situations like that, the stress of it all, and even having conversations like during premarital counseling about this, like it was a struggle.
Bethy's talking about how, well, she doesn't say that this was because of purity culture, but she says like she felt like it was her responsibility to, you know, keep these men from stumbling, and she just couldn't grasp how people could exist in a world with all this sex around them and them not be freaking out.
I think and I felt very similarly in getting married it was it's the woman's job to protect the man, to keep him from sinning, to keep him from lusting, to keep him from failing. When you get married, it's your job to keep the marriage together and make sure that you adultery proof your marriage, you know, it's all on you, like all on the woman. And I think that a lot of that stemmed from, as I'm thinking back to like my own journey and convictions and perspectives over the years, I think a lot of it did stem back to a lot of the teaching that we were exposed to when we were younger in some of these ultra conservative groups where modesty was front and center. And it was like not just front and center for women, but like one of the most important things about godly womanhood. And I remember, you know, hearing sessions on this and seeing the way other women would dress. And it was like, you know, talk about not wanting to objectify women. Like it was this, we were pushing it, you know, the idea in these conservative circles was we don't want to objectify women and sexualize women like the culture is doing, you know, the secular sinful culture. That's all it does is objectify and sexualize women. So we're going to pull against that. And instead we are going to be godly and modest. And it became such a focus, so hyper focused that I think in some ways we were being objectified in the 100%. Sense that we were now viewing ourselves as nothing more than sexual objects that we had to cover. We didn't even know how to look at our own curves and appreciate them in a way that was God honoring, because it was just cover, bigger, baggier. I'm a sexual being. I'm a sexual object. And like, the more I cover, the more godly I am. And like that in so many ways was the vibe of those conservative circles.
Like she nailed it. She absolutely did. Like talking about how conservatives with their emphasis on modesty accidentally became objectifying. I'm proud of them for coming to those conclusions, but you'll also have to remember, like, they act like it's okay for them to question things and for them to disentangle, but nobody else is allowed. Like, otherwise they are attacking Christianity.
And so for us, when Zach and I got married, all that to say, we had a lot of conversations about modesty. And I remember he was more conservative on modesty. Sure. And he was the one that was more concerned, like, oh, like, I don't know. He had a lot of issues with some of the stuff that I wore. And so I remember as we were dating and then eventually got engaged that I started, you know, I was like, okay, well, I want to honor what he thinks. And, you know, he's a guy, like, okay. And so I remember there was this one time where he was like, we had been out somewhere and there was this really creepy guy who was like giving me so many just like stare downs. And of course I hate that. I'm like, creepy guy, get away. Like, what are you doing? And I remember Zach was just furious about it. He's like, okay, that creepy guy, like he was just staring you down like so much. And like, he was so mad. And so he's in that moment of feeling like so mad about that guy and like wanting to punch him. We came home and we weren't married yet. And we were, just hanging out. And he's like, I just think floor length skirts would be the best option for you. And I was like, what? He's like, no, I'm serious. I just think if you wore floor length skirts, that would solve a lot of problems. And I was like, what? And so we had a brief moment, and I had a brief moment of shock where I thought he was really going to like keep pushing for this, but he didn't. Long story short, we've come a long way in our convictions and our thoughts about modesty.
What the fuck, Zach? Like, you're lucky Kristen's covering for your ass and saying that you guys were just joking, because that's a really big red flag. That is not okay. Do not victim shame your wife because some creep was obsessed with her and then tell her to put on a floor-length skirt. Are you kidding me? What do you bring to the table, Zach?
I think that my perspective was very much shaped by that, very black and white, and I equated godliness with outward dress. Yeah. And it was hard for me to disentangle that perspective and recognize like, yeah, modesty matters. It's not like throw it all out and walk around nude. I'm a liberated Christian woman. It's like, where do you find that balance, but going to the heart of it? Yeah. And for me, I was missing the heart, and I was just focusing on the externals.
The part that became the most challenging for me was as I got married and was actually married to a man, I had all these ideas of what modesty should look like. I mean, I don't know if any of y'all remember way back in the day, the Harris brothers, that's like a buzz name, but they had like this whole...
Like Josh Harris, and then he had the two Alex and Brett, the younger brothers.
And they had the Revolution, but they had like released this whole thing on modesty. And it was like, remember,
it was a survey. It was like a huge modesty survey that they were like thousands of people, and it was like what guys think about modesty. Yes.
And I remember reading that like in high school or whenever, and it was like, okay, if a shirt is too tight, if a bra strap is out, like all of this stuff and what guys think. And so I just had this very like, and I, in these conferences we went to and stuff, there was so much stuff like this. So it was like, wow, men are just like stumbling left and right, and they're so weak, and like basically we must protect them, all of this stuff. So then getting married, and my husband is like not really of those mindsets, and he's like, more like we can have self-control and the Holy Spirit can empower us, and we can make choices, and we can choose where we go and what we look at and all of this. Obviously he's still a man, but he was just like, wow, like this is like a really intense perspective. And just more even for the way I viewed myself, he was like, whoa, like just the way you walk into a room and what you think about yourself, what you think about other people, it just seems like not very healthy and very stressful and very much like so enslaving, like not really living for the glory of God and freely being able to enjoy dinner. I'm like so stressed about certain things. And so he started, saying like, oh, I really like when you wear like these kinds of shorts or that kind of dress. And they weren't within my modesty box. And so it started to really challenge me, because I'm like, wow, I'm married to a man, and a man who I am like so often have been like concerned about not wanting to, like be a temptation for, not that I thought, that whole thing. I didn't think women were responsible, but I wanted to be an encouragement as a sister in Christ, all of that. And so I had to start asking myself like, wait, why do I have this conviction? Is it because I really think like all men think this way and I need to dress this way? Or like, why am I dressing and what am I doing? And so my husband actually, for several birthdays now, we've been married for about 5 years. He loves to buy me.
This is really sweet.
He loves to buy me clothes. Wait, is this what you're thinking? What are you thinking?
Oh, I'm just thinking how he loves to buy you clothes.
I mean, wait, what's so sweet?
Because Zach, he would never even attempt to try to buy me clothes. No, ever. But Dave like really loves to love you in this way. And I just think it's really sweet.
From when we were engaged.
I hesitate to say this, but I think Dave is my favorite. He's done some problematic things, but he seems like the smartest person in that group. He seems like he actually thinks things through and like considers the world around him. He's not afraid to engage with opinions and ideologies that aren't his. He's going to real secular therapy, and he's in here telling Bethy to let loose and not be so obsessed with legalism. Like, he seems like a really nice guy, and he especially seems like he really cares about Bethany. So that was a nice thing to walk away from that video with.
Like,
we started to talk about modesty on our blog when, Girl Defined started, in the ancient of dinosaur days and everyone was blogging, doing posts. We started talking about modesty and it like blew up. People wanted us to talk about it more. So we created a digital resource just like we do now, but it was called Project Modesty. And it was like a whole ebook. And it was a lot of work. we basically styled all of these outfits that were in for way back in the day. Now it's like, okay, it was like crack up. almost 10 years ago. Okay. Come on. Back then they were inspiring. And it was just like a whole mindset, how to view modesty, how to approach modesty. We were trying to be careful because we didn't want to put like black and white standards there, but we were saying, here's what we feel comfortable with at that point. And it kind of became like, this is the standard of modesty. We created this really trendy, cute video. A lot of stuff around this whole like brand Project Modesty started going viral. And so we just became known. People like started to even call us like the modesty ministry, which was never what we set out to do. But it just, because we were speaking up so boldly and so kind of confidently about it, people were drawn to it and hated it all at the same time. And so that's kind of what helped to put us on the map. There was a couple of things that put us on the map. That was one of them.
And what else put you on the map, Bethy? Maybe a couple of viral videos?
And over the years, though, Kristen and I, as we've grown and I would say matured and really been humbled in our perspectives as we've, like, I got married, you got married, just lived life, became moms, all this stuff, it really does change you. And as you become more mature in your understanding of the word, what the word actually says, what it doesn't say, you kind of disentangle, like you said, from, okay, what is actually true and what's something that is black and white in scripture and what is something that is a conviction and that each person, each couple, family, whatever needs to seek the Lord with. So,
and you bet your ass I looked up that Project Modesty thing and I was not disappointed.
Despite what modern culture says, fashion and modesty can totally collide. Of course, it's not easy to dress modest and fashionable, but it can totally be done. For us, as Christian girls, modesty has to start in the heart. It's not about a list of rules. It's not about legalism. It's about us honoring God in every area of our lives. We're going to show you some of our secrets for dressing modest and fashionable. Here's a little jeans trick that we've learned. You can take your old jeans and actually turn them into modest, fashionable denim shorts. You just cut them off right below the knee, roll them up once, twice, maybe 3 times, and you can get the length that you desire.
Well, thank God for this video. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known how to turn my jeans into jorts using my mom's kitchen scissors. Side note, never, ever do that. Bethy certainly has been on a journey lately with disentangling gender in general. Check out this clip from The Intercourse, courtesy of Rachel Oates.
The whole idea is that everything in life has masculine and feminine energy, and there's polarity and dynamics between those energies. It does not mean male and female. Human beings have masculine and feminine within us. Every person has some level. So if you imagine it as a spectrum, and we can slide up and down that spectrum throughout our day, women and men can both be masculine and feminine in their life. In the bedroom, it's kind of important to ask yourself, who am I in the bedroom? What do I like? And what does my partner like?
Yeah. Well, and you can, that's the great thing is you can pull the things you like and go, okay, I don't like that. Just take what you like, ditch what you don't. But I love that whole masculine energy, feminine energy, because it just makes that like totally resonated with me when I first heard you talk about that. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting, and I hadn't even I hadn't put that into words. Like I didn't know how to describe that. But when you described it, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And like, even my husband and I in our relationship will naturally kind of go one way or the other, like depending on just the day or the night or whatever. But it's like, oh, that makes sense. And you don't have to, every time you don't have to stay in the one type of, energy.
Okay, pronouns. Okay, woke. I see you're disentangling the gender spectrum. I'm just kidding. She was just trying to actively listen there. I don't know if she actually took that into account, because if she were to acknowledge that gender is a spectrum, she certainly would not be as transphobic as she is.
Also, it's just insane to me that these feminists, these women who have been fighting here in America for so many years to get women's rights, women's equality, opportunities for biological women, are now the ones at the front of the line saying, yeah, don't say women have periods, don't say women can breastfeed, don't say people, a person who chest feeds, we need to be more inclusive. It's like they're the very ones now trying to erase us before our very eyes. And it's not just, y'all, it's not just that God created man and God created woman and they are different, and no matter how we feel on the inside, no matter how we think we identify, God is not a God of confusion. He did not make a mistake.
I am so sick and tired of conservatives talking about confusion when it comes to gender issues. Girl, the only one who's confused is you.
We are pressing into absolute insanity, and honestly, I don't even know what's going to happen in 10, 20 years when this next generation that we are confusing the heck out of grows up and, had chopped off body parts at 14, 15, 16, and now they're 30 and, can't live out the normal function that they once were able to, or kids who are 2, 3, 4 are being told, that there is no such thing as a man or a woman. It's all who you want to be. To me, that is only contributing to the problem of the major mental breakdown that's happening in our world.
You know what grooming is, right? It's the slow, deliberate manipulation of somebody to get them to do something. A little book about pronouns is not grooming anybody, especially not your kids, because we know they're not going to have access to these things. This is concerning somebody else's life. Why are you so concerned with what other people do? The kids are not confused. They know more about this stuff than half of the adults I know. And if you actually did any amount of research, you would know that nobody is doing surgery on children. When children transition, it involves changing their name, changing their pronouns, maybe an outfit change.
And their answer is, no, you need to press into this. You need to be more inclusive. You need to use the pronouns that everyone wants. You need to use the terms and the language that everyone wants, because that's what's best for our mental health. That's what's best for the health of these individuals. And I would completely disagree. And I think that statistics over the last few years show you that they disagree as well. I mean, suicide rates, depression, anxiety, everything is absolutely through the roof.
When people are not allowed to get gender-affirming care, they take their own lives. And I'm not saying that to just make you feel bad, although I do hope that you feel a little bit bad after this. Their lives are dangerous because of Republicans like you. They also face violence at a disproportional rate, and they are routinely discriminated against and persecuted, something that you like to pretend that you know what that feels like, and it is not okay. You need to get with the times, and I'm not asking you to go woke and forsake your entire religion. I'm asking you to be a decent human being for once. It is not okay to make videos like that. The way that you make people feel is unacceptable. You constantly shame and judge others for being different than you. You refuse to understand how they feel. You refuse to talk to them. And instead, you spend all of your time judging others and saying that they're going to hell, saying that they're worthless, saying that they are nothing without God, calling them crazy, calling them groomers. How is that acceptable behavior? People are not taking their own lives because they're unhappy being queer. They're doing it because of the hateful ideas and rhetoric of which you espouse every single day. They are being shamed. They are told they're going to hell. They are told that they are demonic, and a whole other host of shocking things that come out of your mouth on the daily. These people think that they are worthless, and they are not getting any support or help from people like you. It's time to cut the bullshit, because what you are doing is dangerous, and it absolutely affects people. You are not just on your own little Christian island anymore. The content that you make is now out into the world. It is mainstream now, and it is affecting people's lives in a very bad and dangerous way. Whew. So, I guess I'll talk now about what you all came for, which is Bethy's ultimate sex... What is it called? Ultimate Guide? Bethy's Ultimate Sex Course. Bethy's newest niche, which is making these online courses. The last time we talked, she was doing a course about how to make courses, but now she is doing courses about different stages of sexual relationships that you have in a Christian life. She's got one for singles, marrieds, engaged, honeymoon. And don't worry, these are all the same exact messages, just repackaged. Bethy is famous for just plagiarizing herself, and also not editing her work for mistakes, but that's besides the point. She also rebranded herself as the intimate wife, which I didn't know that's what had happened. And for a second, when I first saw that username, I thought that Lori was just being horny on Maine again, which happens a lot more often than you would think. And then I was like, oh, the intimate wife, as opposed to what? As opposed to what, Bethy? But anyway, that's what she's on to now. A lot of it is like questionnaires, or like, do this one thing before you go on your honeymoon and you'll have the best sex ever. And it's like asking your partner, how many times do you want to have sex on your honeymoon? She talks about sex more than the secret life of the American teenager, and I'm tired of it.
These Christian influencers who used to be like so pro abstinence, don't have sex, get married, and then seem to be making these kind of like sexual jokes or, you know, kind of sexy videos or talking about sex. Like, that's a really hard jump for people to see them like not talking about sex, saying no to sex like it's this really bad thing, and then all of a sudden being pro sex. And it's a little bit frustrating when I see articles like this, because I feel like they take an entire movement, in my opinion, which was like the most conservative, strictest parts of like, you know, purity culture, the most conservative parts of like the True Love Waits movement.
Bethy, I don't know if the hot Texas sun is getting to you. I see that you're in your car. Maybe you should drink some water. But I would consider Girl Defined and your entire community as the worst part of the purity culture movement. So I don't know. Maybe you should figure that out.
And they lump any influencer, any ministry that talks about God's design for sex and, you know, waiting to enjoy it within the covenant of marriage as like the worst parts. They kind of talk about it like the worst parts of purity culture are true for them too.
Of course, Bethy thinks that we're just mad because she's talking about sex, not that we're mad because she taught purity culture for so many years and now she's obsessed with like talking about like, you know, her dry dead bones.
I 100% thought, oh, any pleasure that I am experiencing kind of needs to be like come from him, and I'm just kind of this person that kind of is these almost like dead bones. I call them like dead bones. Like I'm just kind of there, kind of, okay, now make it happen. And that didn't work well, you know, if you can imagine.
She doesn't, the worst part is that she doesn't address the harms of purity culture. Sometimes she'll name drop purity culture, but like it's such a surface level acknowledgement of it. Remember, Girl Defined is the reason why we have terms like mind virgin and sexual brokenness.
The problem is that sexual brokenness really does impact all of us. You know, whether we are a teen to, you know, single to married couples.
So I find it really rich that she's trying to rebrand herself as a fucking sex guru when she was the one telling us that wearing shorteralls makes you a harlot.
My basketball team and I, we had started doing like a book exchange, and everyone loved fiction. And so we were exchanging all these books. And I realized after a while, like, wow, the books that I began to start reading and enjoying became very much like they were kind of like Christian romance novels, and they kind of progressed from there. And I think they were, you know, some would call it like, I don't know, soft mommy porn or something. Like,
please call it something else. Don't say that. That makes me so uncomfortable.
It's time to put away the erotic novels and content that you are consuming. Your husband probably has no idea, like really what's in the books, the movies, the accounts that you're following, and you've just kind of somehow like decided that this is okay because other Christian women are doing this. But I just want to encourage you, like, this is not helping your marriage. This is not helping you to have a truly thriving sex life. Consuming erotica, basically mommy porn, is not going to help you have a God-centered, thriving, meaningful, passionate marriage.
You know, on one hand, she's like, masturbation is wrong, but self-cultivation is okay. In one post, she says, toys are okay. How specific are you going to get with the sins here? And why is it suddenly up to you? What's next? Are you going to say, is it sinful to play wicked whims? The answer is yes. It's just really weird how she's rebranding herself. Like, she not only is like infecting Girl Defined videos with her sex course, I wonder if it's, because she doesn't have a very large audience with her own stuff. Okay, guys, editing Jen here. I really wanted to point something out. So I was on the regular Girl Defined Instagram. This is not Bethy's specific Instagram, because I was trying to find like an example of Bethy overtaking Girl Defined with her sex course. And while I didn't quite find that, it seems like they're both talking about lust and, purity within marriage, which is fucking weird, but whatever. And so I was like, maybe I'm not going to find anything, right? And so then I clicked on this picture because I was like, oh, I love a group pic. I do. And so I clicked on it. And at first I thought it was weird that they called Rebecca and Susanna. It was weird that they called them volunteers when that's their sisters, but whatever. The middle lady here, she was also a volunteer. I hope they're getting paid. But anyway, the reason why I bring your attention to this post is because, like, this is normal, blah, 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 blah. And then people kept commenting, bot history. Here, donate bot. Here, donate bot. Is there really a donate bot? And I was like, donate bot? What are you talking about? And so I started to click on the replies. And anytime you mention donate, it will summon a message from Girl Defined that says sent you a DM. Now, this one is different than the other one. Maybe they have like 2 or 3 responses, right? Because, like, literally, no matter what you say, it will say sent you a DM. Even if you say like this one, like this one says, can you send me a DM to help me donate to Planned Parenthood? And it says, check your DMs. One of them was like, what the fuck? It was like, had a great orgy. Can't wait to donate to some sex workers. And they said, sent you a DM. So either there is a bot that shows up if you say donate, or one of these poor girls is having to reply to each of these comments with that. So what? I don't even know. Guys, I have an Instagram, right? So I don't know how a bot on Instagram would even work. I don't know how you program one of those. I don't know if there's like a company you can call, but I think there might be some truth here to there being a donate bot. So what? I just thought that was funny. Oh, also Morgan liked this post, which, that makes sense. They're friends. But like, she just wants to be seen as like sex positive almost, but that is impossible when you're transphobic, homophobic, and actively, shaming people for having premarital sex. Also, I know we're all having a laugh here and joking about Bethy talking about like pissing and farting during sex, but I wanted to be very serious here because that is very normal and you shouldn't be ashamed of it. Just like some of the tips that she gives are good advice, like the, don't feel bad if it's taking you a long time to get off. You're worth the time it takes to try and pursue that. But like I'm saying here, she is not sex positive because she is actively bigoted towards homosexuals and transgender people. And she also believes that there should be purity, which is this nebulous concept that has ever moving goalposts, and she's talking about things that are biblical and aren't biblical. So she's saying there are right and wrong ways to have sex, and she's just being weird and wishy-washy about it. And her course is all video, by the way. It's just a bunch of interviews that she did. They're not good quality. Half the time she has her child with her. Knowing how judgmental she is and how she is also promoting these people as like experts is really dangerous, especially when they say stuff like this.
All those verses about submitting and those things, when a husband is in active sin, he's not loving you like Christ. And while you can be your best self, you can also say no to sex, because sex that is porn related, sex that is not an intimate experience, also can be traumatizing. So I want to give you permission that you can say no to this until he's in recovery, or at least is showing progress and repentance and cooperation towards good recovery. I give her that permission.
So apparently you can only say no to your husband if he's currently sinning. If he's not, don't say no. You can't really. It's your duty, isn't it? This is dangerous and disgusting to tell people, and it's not okay. You do not need an excuse to say no to someone, whether you're married or not, regardless of gender or sexuality or anything else. You can always say no to someone at any time, in any circumstance, for any reason. That is okay. Honestly, I think one of the most disturbing things about this entire course is that, like I say, there's probably around 8 or so hours of footage, right? And I don't think the word consent is muttered once.
You know what? Rachel brings up a really good point here that even I hadn't considered. How does Bethy have so many courses and like 8 hours worth of footage about sex, but she does not talk about consent not one damn time? And I'm not trying to say that Bethany doesn't ever consider consent, but I mean, she hasn't brought it up. But it reminds me of people like the transformed wife who take that to its next logical conclusion, and she advocates for marital rape. And I only use that word because she says it. And she believes, and a lot of fundamentalists believe, that once you get married, you give your body completely over to your husband and you no longer have consent, that he no longer needs to ask, that it's just a given that this is what you will do, this is your duty. And so that's why we bring this up, is because it actually is very dangerous and very scary, and people like Bethany just treat it like it's an afterthought. Yeah, $170 she was charging for that really dangerous advice. Is it worth it? So that's kind of what's been going on with Girl Defined for the last couple of months. If I missed anything, I am so sorry, but hey, I can throw it into the next video. And now we shall talk about the Paul and Morgan collab, which, for the record, you know what? I'm really excited for the fan bases of both of those two, as small as they are, because that was probably really exciting. That was their Jordan and McKay Fundy Fridays collab, okay? So good for them. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Royal Rumble.
The division between Christians online
Wow.
is immense. In this series, we will press into tough conversations, disagree with love, and humanize the person behind the screen.
Join us as we discover the
They're trying to do a video essay. Good for them.
Hey, Kristen and Bethany, legalistic Christians living in an echo chamber? What about the Christians they've started to upset?
We'll get an honest look into Bethany and
Okay.
Dave's marriage and the challenges of living in the spotlight while seeing some things very differently. This video is loaded. Get ready.
There was like not that long ago, maybe like 2 years ago, I didn't want Dave to leave the house or like work out without a shirt on, swim without a shirt on. I just thought like, I don't want ladies seeing my man's big muscles. But it's like a change of perspective. It's more like he doesn't, it's okay to be an attractive person. You don't have to like hide your body completely, like to be modest. Not like necessarily where you're just like going around naked, but like just because you are attractive doesn't mean that's a problem. So now he runs and swims shirtless.
Paul loves kombucha, and I want to please.
You might as
my
well just drink a
husband.
beer. Drink an IPA, Paul.
He does not want it.
I'll go 7.25.
Is that real?
What? Oh, what? He's questioning my scoring?
No. I'm serious. Like, do you do that as a joke, or do you really, in your brain, you're like, it's not a 7.5?
Get him,
Does this seem
Dave.
like a joke to you, Dave?
Yeah.
If I'm rating these, even though Dave's making fun of me, both of these tacos.
I am making fun of you.
Both of these tacos are in the high 8s.
I love Dave.
Come on!
That was a great score. Here's a genuine inquiry, and I just want to hear your reaction to it. You, from talking to you briefly, would be the type of Christian that I would push back on. Like,
all the time. Well, you're not the only one.
say like, yeah, we started hanging out. I was like, hey, Dave, it's the cussing, man. Like, why are you cussing? And then I maybe would quote a Bible verse, like, let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouth.
Okay.
What would you know what I mean? Like, oh, I didn't hear what he said. Did he just cuss at me?
Shut up,
I love Dave.
Oh, wow. When someone says, well, what does the Bible say? I typically will hear a certain type of what I would call biblicism underlying that, a theory of the Bible that often we just take as self-evidently true. This is what the Bible is. A lot of this stuff is actually, it's more difficult when you actually get down to the conversations, I have found. It's easy for each side. Oh, you're a fundamentalist. Oh, you're a progressive. It's easy to kind of hurl like, oh, progressives are just relativists, or fundamentalists are just dogmatists. But the reality is, I think we all have beliefs that we think are true, and we all have relativisms operating as well. When your view is one that the Bible should just be this clear thing we all sort of have access to, and the Holy Spirit just teaches us what to believe. Well, you got tons of groups out there who all claim the Holy Spirit as their teacher, coming to different conclusions.
A lot of groups, but you do see a lot of unity as well around the fundamental doctrines. And then there, to me at least, and then you see the splitting with the secondary issues, and that's one of the goals of this series. But yeah, man, you're a deep guy. Have you ever, you're familiar with the expression, don't be so open-minded that your brain falls out?
It is remarkable to me how fast Paul short-circuited.
Yep.
Under the weight of even the most mild, like, hey man, sometimes we interpret God differently as churches, and doctrine is tricky. I don't, there's a lot of unity though too. Like that was
fundamentally,
bro.
Excuse my pun here. Dave is far more intelligent and thoughtful than Paul, and Paul really thinks he's like the smartest person in the room. Paul is like, oh, what's Ginger's husband? Like Jeremy, like he thinks he is the philosophical like God, and Dave's like just like listing different theological terms and ways to describe things, and he's just like, it's not working out. I also wonder if the intent of this series is to start arguments, and they're not going to call them arguments, they're going to call them discussions, but I wonder if the whole point is that he wants to get him to say something a little more intense.
Paul, I mean, we've seen from like the street interviews, Paul thinks of himself as this like social provocateur, asking the tough questions. I'm the smart guy in the room, I've got the answer. And Dave didn't even dunk on him. Dave just picked up the basketball and agreed to play a game. And he was like, I don't know, man. My back and my ankle, and I'm having all this like it was kind of sad, because this is Paul and Morgan's show. And it took 3 minutes for Dave to upstage him, but maybe that's me.
I feel like some deconstructionists would fit into that. Dave asked me to do the polar bath challenge. Cold water, to go with the cold water. I'll be honest, I'm not looking forward to this at all.
I'm trying to make you
just two Christian dudes chilling in an ice bath together. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
My theory was he's trying to make him as uncomfortable as possible to get him out of there early. Yeah. He's like, all right, we're gonna do an ice bath, and then we're gonna do like hot chili eating contest. It's basically like Hot Ones, except it's just raw chili peppers. And then we're gonna go sandpaper skating. And if you've never done, like, he just doesn't want him there.
I like to start the timer.
Hard nipples.
Okay. Okay, this is actually some interesting info for me, because I'm obsessed, with Girl Defined. And this is like behind the scenes in their little studio. Or maybe I've been trying to figure out where Bethy has been filming, because I think it's in like a bedroom. Anyway, here we go.
We are going to put them on the hot seat. So if you know Paul and Morgan, we are going to get behind the scenes and ask them about their marriage.
We just wrapped up the podcast. How we feeling?
So good. It's so interesting, like, being together in person and like getting to talk about our similar experiences, especially when it comes to like negative online experiences. Like, we don't often have that camaraderie of like, wow, someone who understands and gets us.
It's just so fun to get like the behind the scenes of y'all's whole inner workings of how, because we know how we do things at Girl Defined, and it's a lot of similar stuff, different, but like getting the behind the scenes and
talking about, you know, like the conflicts in marriage right before you record.
Yeah.
How you are through those before you talk about the Lord.
I don't think I could do anything like this with my sister, so.
Really?
You and I, we've had some low. This is like the best. Probably the last 2 years or so are the most peaceful and the best Girl Defined has ever been between us.
Yeah.
The girls are fighting!
The last 2 years of Girl Defined, where we've seen the least of each other and have worked as little as possible together, and honestly, interacted as little as possible together.
2 years? Bitch, I've been watching Girl Defined for like 6-7 years.
Well, we remember the bad times.
Yes, we do.
I'm surprised y'all didn't end up fist fighting at some point.
We went through a time where it was like a few years ago where we were like, we have to find a counselor. We have to find someone who specializes like in like ministry counseling.
Family.
I got excited there for a second that they were going to go to counseling together, and it's just biblical counseling.
Well, but at the same
I'm sure
time,
they told you to turn the other cheek.
We really need someone who specializes in ministry, in counseling families that are also ministry. Okay. Your friend Steve. You're talking about somebody you know, clearly.
Or that one that went to dinner with her.
Oh.
And was talking about her big boobs, remember?
Oh, God, I forgot all about that. It's just layers with these people.
We just
working together, relationships.
We just could not like see eye to eye on like how to operate the ministry and like what to do, and we just both grew and matured somehow through that, and it just has.
And we
like,
changed the way we operate.
Yeah,
we've like established some very good, healthy patterns of.
So we didn't actually end up doing the counseling, but it's been like,
It was a great idea.
If you've never heard of this concept, it's called a pre-ward. That's where you pre-reward yourself for doing something and then you don't do it.
Well, I just love the subtext I'm hearing here is, yeah, we were going to do this counseling and then we realized we could just stop being around each other. And then things improved.
You know what? I have a hypothesis here, okay? A hypotenuse. They used to film at Kristen's house. I remember that. They would film in Kristen's bedroom. They would film in the living room. And then Bethy moved into an apartment with Dave. I remember all that. And then she got a house. And now they record separately or in a studio. So maybe the distance really helped them.
On the record, they were here before we started. They were some of our inspirations and helped us get the ball rolling. And they are still going hard. And that is rare in this space. This is not an easy space to have longevity.
In ministry alone, but then also YouTube. Like, ooh.
I mean, I feel like for us, it's been like having.
He's still coming.
Like knowing why we're here, because it's like now that we're both moms, you know, like that's a priority, and that's really.
You didn't miss anything.
Didn't think I did.
Paul said it, like he congratulated them for being on YouTube and inspiring them, which is kind of funny because I guess they kind of inspired me to make stuff too, but.
Devil is due and all that.
How's that working out for you guys?
You guys have gotten some pretty heavy criticism, and you guys know, honestly, can
we just talk about that?
They have been through it. They have been through it. Like, man.
Like the most hated Christian channel out there, I feel like.
Really? That sounds, that's not to say like in a...
Was that a little...
I don't know if she meant that as a compliment or as
I know what she means. Okay, I know what she means. But that was kind of...
It was jarring. It was a jarring way to phrase it, is what we'll say. You're not wrong, I just feel like that language was a little loaded.
I don't know, maybe you guys should stop being hateful bigots and judging others, and we'll leave you alone.
Like, you guys just get it, man. And
yeah.
Well, so one thing I'm wondering, modesty. You guys have some videos where you are now versus where you were, say, 5 years ago. And actually, one of our patrons said to ask you guys that. Have your views changed on modesty?
We have a great podcast that we recorded on that. What was that one? Oh, it was called How Are
This will be fun for the viewers that are watching this video. I already reacted to that one. I already did that. Okay?
views on modesty have changed.
There we go.
They have changed. But I think they've changed more so in the fact that we were painting very black lines in scripture of like modesty is this, it isn't this, and drawing these lines and these boundaries and saying this is what's biblical and this is what isn't. And we've come to realize the scripture doesn't actually draw those lines that we were drawing. It talks about modesty and women should care about it, but not in the ways that we were drawing lines. Like our version of modesty wasn't 100% biblical, I guess. So coming to terms of just realizing like our perspective was our opinion, but not biblical truth. And we've even changed in some of our opinions of what we believe about modesty and our views on just, I don't know, like what would you add?
Well, I mean, we don't even think the same on it exactly now. Like we've changed. I think especially for me, like getting married. So I was like single for much longer than you. And so I had all these ideas of like, oh, modesty and men and like all of this stuff. And then getting married to Dave and him sharing more of like his actual thoughts with me. And then me really asking myself, why do I feel like this certain thing is modesty?
Look at someone like Joshua Harris. You guys are obviously familiar with Joshua Harris. He looks back at his past and he went so far as to make apologies for it, say this was harmful because my views on purity culture, they caused harm to people, and now he's like one of the leaders in the deconstruction movement. When you look back, are you like inclined to say, man, we caused harm because we made it look too black and white, or are you more like, no, we still believe that, but we could have worded it a little better?
We haven't issued an apology.
No, we haven't. In our podcast episode, it was us just saying this is how we've grown. This is how God has changed us and even our understanding of like interpreting scripture and being careful to not put our own interpretation on what scripture is saying and adding to it. But
I would like to also point out that I just reacted to that in this very video that you're watching, because they did a very flippant response to that and said harm in parentheses because they can't possibly empathize or imagine what it's like to be hurt by purity culture, even though both of them have been hurt by purity culture because they didn't get sex education. And now Bethy's overcompensating with her sex course. And they just don't acknowledge that stuff. There's no acknowledgement of consent in purity culture. There's nothing but shame and telling you that you are like a disgusting being and that your worth is only tied up in your virginity, which is a social construct. And there's just all kinds of harms within purity culture. So it's really interesting that they're like, we didn't issue an apology. And I didn't play it for you. Maybe I will now. But when I was reacting to the modesty video, they also, Bethy did like a mocking thing at the beginning where she was like, we're not issuing an apology, haha.
Yes, we have changed our mind. And are we here to do a big apology video and say we're sorry? Like, no, that's not the point of this.
What do you think that is? Like, the type of person who can't apologize. Like, what does that say about somebody?
I mean, I would consider it to be emotional immaturity. Like, you caused problems. You probably messed up some people's perception of them, even in your own version of it. If you just messed up some people's relationship with purity and modesty and all that, you still like did a bad thing and should probably like say, hey, I shouldn't have said that, because you're talking about how, oh, we've grown, but we're not gonna make amends for all the stuff we said very publicly.
There's also no harm in apologizing. Like, that's only gonna make things better for you, and it helps you grow as a person.
Yeah, to me, the phrase, I've grown, so I'm not going to apologize, is kind of an oxymoron.
And that they're like, oh, well, we like some parts of it, but, we're going to get rid of the other stuff. But don't get rid of purity. Don't make sure you don't mess with it. That's the same thing the same reason why they say disentanglement instead of deconstruction is because they're like, just so you know, guys, we're still Christian. Don't hate me, because that's really all that matters in their culture is how much of a devout Christian you are and how much you absolutely cannot ever question the faith, and you must never show any sort of doubt, because there is a lot of peer pressure in their community. And like, people will talk about you and like shame you if you even so much as start to question these things. And it's just really obvious that this is how they double down and that they have this fake maturity. It's like the SZA song, I'm so mature, like it's tongue in cheek. And so I just find that interesting.
Yeah, also, this is just as an aside, I feel like Paul talks about deconstruction the way that, like, conservatives talk about Antifa. He doesn't know what it is. He's not entirely
is the deconstruction
sure
in the room with us?
How it even impacts him. All he knows that it doesn't like Jesus, and it's bad. That's what he's figured out so far. And he's going to abuse that into oblivion.
It has not been removed. I reacted to it in this video. This is a fun time.
We're having
Looks like Paul did the same amount of research that I did.
Yeah.
Some of the reasons you were describing.
It can be really hard to find modest shirts right off the rack. But with a little creativity, you can make a lot of them work. Low-cut shirts. You can add a cami underneath, you can add a scarf on top, or a button-up underneath. And shirts that aren't fixable, just stitch them.
You could get that little thing. I forgot.
Oh, the
cami window. It's like when you don't want to wear a full undershirt, it just like covers your boob window. I don't remember what it's called. You strap it to the straps.
What is it?
Cami secret.
Yeah,
cami secret. Get you a cami secret. There you go. I just fixed all your problems.
No intentions to deconstruct.
No.
From Girl Defined.
Not gonna happen.
Is this fucking play about us?
You seem very much at peace with him working through this stuff and figuring out like where he stands on things. What do you think? Why do you think you're so at peace with that?
I mean, from the beginning, honestly, like a huge goal of mine in marriage was to not try to control my husband, and I had seen that done like so much, and it seems like there's a happy marriage on the front, you know, all of these conservative values and all of this, you know, like going to the word and stuff, but then behind the scenes there was like a lot of anxiety or just like a lot of dysfunction. I didn't really care about Dave like putting like, I mean I did, but like I didn't want him to just appear a certain way for like my own ego or image or whatever. And you know, he grew up in a family where he knows the Bible frontwards and backwards, you know, like he
said he's read it multiple times.
Yeah. Even just like in the years that we've been married, he's, you know, like if he commits to something, he does it. So he did like 2 years back to back where he did like Bible reading plan, and he like never, you know, like he absolutely finishes it. And like we'll do like Bible trivia games, and he like knows, like he knows all of it. He's like extremely like highly churched, like highly in the word, and the like fruit of some of that, like just the anxiety and the struggle and the just like, I don't know, like it's just been difficult. Dave is someone who like is constantly seeking outside advice, and the mentors, our pastor, the men in his life, I highly respect and I think are really amazing. And so I like, to me, he's a man like that is like very full of integrity. And so instead of having an interest in reading certain books or learning from certain teachers and me just being like, I don't like that, don't show that to me, I want to be more like inviting of that and being like, hey, I want to know, share that with me. And to be honest, like who he is as a man now, and like his, like, I don't know, how he loves me, how he treats our family, his stability as a leader has only improved. And so like I feel like I have a better life.
Yeah.
So I guess it's something I'm not really afraid of, because I just, maybe some of this practical stuff that he's learning now was missed as he was growing up, and so it's almost like rewinding. And although not all of it's like from a Christian perspective, to me it seems like it's been really beneficial in his life. And now we don't listen to all the same things and read all the same things, and we don't approach how we like.
So what she's saying is that every Friday at 7 p.m. Central, Dave is watching Fundy Fridays, and he's also a patron, and he is on the Discord, is what she's saying.
That's an interpretation. I don't know if I agree with it. But here's what I will say. What I heard in that is, I've tried to argue with Dave about theology and beliefs, and he's really smart and learned and actually goes out and looks things up and researches it. And so I still believe what I believe, even though I don't really have a lot of backing for it, but I am tired of losing arguments to him. So I just say that we're learning together and he's doing it this way. Like, I don't know. You be less excited to go on a growth journey with your husband. That's how I would feel about this.
I think this is, it honestly does sound mature.
Yeah.
From Bethy. Like, I was not
I'll give her that,
expecting
yeah.
this. Like, she seems, I don't know.
I guess you can't expect...
She's changing for the better, but I also think this is interesting because it does lend some truth to maybe Dave having an existential crisis, maybe having a faith journey, and it's just really interesting that she's like, oh, he's read the Bible front to back multiple times. Sometimes the people who deconstruct are the most, like, fluent in the Bible. Like, a lot of the deconstructors that I know were very faithful, and they went hard for Christianity, and that's kind of what was the tipping point, is because they saw everything and they had this immense pressure. And I'm not trying to say that Dave is going to deconstruct with a capital D. I was just playing, but it's just interesting that this is like a known fact enough that Morgan's going to ask about it, you know? And I do kind of like her answer, I guess. It didn't really make sense to me.
I mean, to me, it felt...
She rambles a lot.
She does, and I think it's a tough subject. I also think it's reasonable to be a little bit, you know, you don't have to be happy, smiley, joyful when you're you know, when your husband is, like, changing a faith that's very important to you. I get that. It just seems like she's acknowledging that he comes to his decisions out from a good place. He reads, he researches, he talks with others. She just doesn't seem... She's still, in my opinion, and this may just be me, but it still seems to me like she's, even though she's like, yeah, he reads a lot and I get what he's saying, she still fundamentally is just like, but I still believe the way I do.
Right, and that's gotta be really frustrating.
Yeah, like, it's like he's growing and learning and doing this stuff, and you're kind of just stagnating is what I'm hearing here. And again, I'm putting my own stank on it, but that's what I hear.
If I want peace in my life, I am very much like go to the Word, and like my relationship with Christ is where I find that. And that's not always the case for him, but like it doesn't bother me that much, which sounds crazy.
Yeah. But how do you feel like it will affect kids, like your all's kids, as they start to get older, start asking questions, like they ask him questions and about the Bible or about just like, you know, whatever, something very stereotypical that like Dave and you might see totally different on. How do you guys think you'll approach that?
Yeah. Well, he actually initiated and led us switching churches. So we were going to kind of like a basic Bible-believing, non-denominational type of church. And it's the church I grew up in. I was very comfortable there. And he wasn't super excited about it. And he really was the one who initiated us leaving. So now we go to a small Lutheran church, which was so different than anything I grew up with. But that's kind of like as much as he might read all these books about philosophy or whatever, I don't know, all this other stuff, he is like the one who led our family into this church that is amazing. And I have learned and grown like so much as a Christian, and it's a place where I'm so
didn't care for that little motorcycle driving.
That guy needs to calm down.
Well, okay, I can't imagine a universe where Bethy goes to an affirming church, but I do not know anything about Lutherans at all. I'm gonna have to like text my Christian friends and see what Lutheranism is all about.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'm assuming it's based on like Martin Luther teaching.
Everything I learned about Lutheranism, I learned from Drop Dead Gorgeous.
I gotta do some Googling. I'm gonna pull a Bethy and be on my phone the whole time.
Excited to raise my kids and to raise a family. And I think that if I had tried to control that, like, no, I want to stay at our previous church, like that's scary to move churches. And now we're in this Lutheran church with all of this liturgy and, you know, like infant baptism and all these crazy things. We wouldn't have made this transition if I had like dug my heels in, but I was excited about it. And it was, even though it was a little scary, and that's like all because of Dave's leadership, you know? And so I feel like our kids are in a wonderful place. Like, although we might not agree on everything theologically or how we go about practically getting help, like he to me is someone who is like very much has like a true, genuine faith. It just looks really different from mine. But I view my kids as having like an incredible dad. And I think they're going to be like extremely stable and not manipulated into the faith, or not like coerced into like, this is, you need to look this way and act this way. And then when they get older, like ditch it. I think.
You mean like what you and your sister did with your ministry for however many years?
Still do.
What?
Today.
They have a dad who's extremely authentic and genuine, and in the long run, to me, that's like going to go so much further than him looking like this, you know, ideal Christian man, whatever that is. If that makes sense.
Yeah, very interesting.
Morgan's like, no. No.
Hey, it's your all's marriage. You gotta figure it out.
How are you holding up, Bethany?
Good. Can I get y'all a snack? Oh, look what I have. Look, does anyone need a bar?
Oh, ho, ho! We got bars.
I mean, between the two of us, for sure, like, who's influenced the other more, like, in our relationship, for sure, Dave's influenced me more.
Okay.
Like, I've for sure become more like him.
Yeah.
And so I guess less kind of like my family, less how I was raised.
Yeah.
Is that hard for your family to see?
I think they're just like, oh, Dave and Bethy, they're random. I don't.
Those two crazy kids.
Everyone so far has been like super respectful and like very much like, you know, as adults, like respecting each other's views. Maybe if we were like ditching the faith or something, but it's like we're still super strong Christians. It just looks different in some of the gray areas and secondary issues. I want my views to be challenged because I don't just want to live in a certain way or believe things because I've always believed them and they're like not actually true or beneficial. There might be a better way to live.
I have a feeling that like a lot of people who watch your stuff, who hate watch your stuff, are like, she just lives in an echo chamber. She's not surrounded by anyone with differing opinions. I think they would be shocked to know. Like,
okay, but we're talking about differing opinions like transphobia and like stuff like that, not differing opinions like I go to a slightly different denomination than I used to.
Yeah.
Or like I wear short shorts, she wears t-shirts. Like what? Like it's not.
We don't care about infant baptism. How y'all feel about systemic racism?
Yeah, like that's
like,
what actually matters.
Put the water on the baby forehead. I don't care. Like how y'all feel about the prison industrial complex.
Right.
Like this is, and also Morgan, be more judgy. Well, that's for you guys and your marriage to figure out. Okay. Yeah, because I'm sure you got it all figured out.
Okay, so what I learned about Lutherans just from Google is they believe that Scripture alone has the authority to determine doctrine as opposed to, like, the church or...
Priests can't interpret it for you. That was...
Or, yeah, the Pope. And that they believe that it's grace, not works, which... That's all Protestants. So... I don't...
Well, I think, as I recall, he broke off somewhat from the Catholics, too, didn't he? Because I also remember...
Yes, that's what Protestants are.
No, I meant Martin Luther, because, like, I thought he was Catholic. And
I thought he was the guy with the list. And he did it on the
98
doors.
Theses, and he banged it on the door. Maybe you're right. Because I also remember, I feel like Lutherans were the ones who were the first to translate the Bible into the vernacular instead of into Latin. Because at the time, Latin was like, well, that was a way that the priest class kept it away from the people, was you had to learn old Latin to be able to read the Bible. So they'd be like, I'll interpret the Bible for you, stupid poor person, and then you'll just believe me. And Luther was like, no, give him a Bible in his language. Let him read it, and then he can tell you what he thinks. That's kind of what I remember. Again, most of what I've learned comes from Drop Dead Gorgeous, which is a great movie, but not good for academic discussion.
Well, I want to make it a little... I want to be real with you guys here, okay? We tried to go play pickleball with our friends, and it was so busy. It's such a popular sport that we didn't even get in. We waited for like 30 minutes, and then we went and got Mexican food. So,
which was also fun.
It was a lot of fun. A lot of fellowship.
Mm.
Thought they played well. They were putting up a fight, but I was ready to switch up teams. They won another round. That just shows they are competitive.
Is that what that shows?
Competitive.
But like, I want to point out, like he said, like I wanted to switch teams. So you either wanted to play with the woman who's not your wife, or the other man here. At which point you would be absolutely dominate. What was?
I don't know. I kind of, if I was playing a sport, I might pick Bethy to be on my team.
I would have until I saw her. She didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Dave was all over that court like friggin' Pete Sampras, and she's doing nothing.
Go, girl. Give us nothing.
Yourself.
This would hurt Paul.
Oh my God.
Wow,
yes!
That is CrossFit.
They got it.
Here, let me try to snap.
He could...
Oh, yeah.
We were wrong. We were wrong. Not Ethan Plath. Dave. Dave is going to be the wrestler we need.
Dub. Yep.
Dave.
No, okay, I won't do that. I just want to trust something.
You are gonna hurt your back.
Okay. Oh, I'm not gonna do that. I just.
He's gonna kill his back. What is happening? What?
Oh!
What I can do?
Dang.
Whoa!
This is so Mac. This is so Mac trying to do a backflip. I can totally do a backflip. I can totally do a backflip.
This is Country Mac and City Mac.
Yes, it is.
Because Dave can do all the stuff.
Back to business.
Actually, that's great.
Fine, we're not doing that anymore now that you can do it and I can't.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, Bethany, we've talked a little bit about like how you and Kristen have grown in your views and whatnot, and I feel like you all get pushback for growing.
I mean, the pushback for growing probably comes more from Christians.
Yeah.
Because they're like used to us being a certain way, and they like the, I guess, the more conservative black and white version of us. We've been accused of, you know, like conservative Christians are like, we can't follow y'all anymore. You're basically like becoming feminists. And it's like, have you seen like all the stuff we're posting?
Yeah.
That's kind of...
What the fuck? That feminist is also like deconstruction, where they just throw it as an insult to anybody who deviates from their norms. You know what I mean?
I feel like the message she's talking about, she probably got straight from Lori.
Yeah.
It came from Lori.
Yeah. Like, in what fucking universe?
I don't know. Like, if we're not super hard on everything, like how a dating relationship be pure, just like anything, it's like it's not necessarily like feminist stuff, but they just view us, if we're not ultra conservative, then we have to be like feminist. You know, if we're not ultra conservative, then we have to be deconstructing. Like, if we're not.
There's no middle ground.
Yeah,
in
there's
their
no
minds.
middle ground. It's like very, very extreme. But at the end of the day, we're not trying to be like the Holy Spirit for people and tell people what they can and can't do. People have specifically accused me of being like, oh, you're really becoming, you know, more of a feminist and stuff. Like, oh, Bethany, she's taking steps, she's almost there. And I always crack up.
Ladies, is it feminism to exist?
They're not saying that you're almost there, like you're almost a feminist. They're saying, oh, she's so close to the real point.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying about you. Also, they're like, there's got to be a middle ground. The middle ground between your Christianity and atheism is deconstruction. That's the middle ground. That's the middle.
But, you know, whatever.
Like the haters, they would only be happy if it were like a full deconstruction. And then like going out and like hating Girl Defined or making apology videos or whatever. It's like, I'm, you know.
Whoa, that was a big one.
Why is it so fun for boys to like throw things
don't
on your
know.
head?
But Luca is literally obsessed with throwing things at us, and I'm like,
So, you know, we're talking about the haters. They say something like, Kristen and Bethany's views are still problematic, and again, these are the hate videos.
Yeah.
Still problematic, but I am seeing progress with them. From my research, I'm seeing a trend of that. How does that make you feel, and is that a good thing that they're saying that?
I don't take that as a compliment. So we're not going anywhere.
How does it make you feel? Because I was watching a video today. Haters, criticism videos. You guys get a ton of it.
Girl Defined, once again.
Girl Declined.
Girl Defined 2.
Girl Defined.
The new Girl Defined video.
Girl Defined posted a video.
No, I saw a video.
So we would have been good enough for the trailer.
I am
You knew what you were doing.
mad that I didn't have the microphone on when I screamed.
She shrieked. It was great, y'all. Hearing that type of stuff, that's the benefit of being Mr. Fundy Fridays. That's my fringe benefits. I got to hear the shriek in real time.
And
we knew y'all was watching.
Is that was the one that like is the most, I would say, damning of Girl Defined, is the one that he just played a clip from, because it's where I talk about like Dave and his therapy and the sexologist. Wow.
Also, Anna Marie.
Oh yeah, Anna Marie, hit me up.
Yeah, we like her. She's cool.
33 million views reacting to you guys.
Yeah.
That wasn't my video.
No. No.
I'm pretty sure any of the million views are either gonna be Trixie or they're gonna be Cody Co.
I'm just like, well, first off, what do you think is so appealing about people watching videos on you? Like, why is there so much interest around you guys?
I mean, honestly, I have been trying to figure that out. I don't know if it's like the dumb blonde stereotype or if it's because like we're sisters. Like, I've wondered that. Like, why is there just like this explosion of people that love to make cringe videos about us? What do you think?
Oh, what do I think? You guys were some of the first ones, and you guys were, okay, you all are very bubbly.
bubble. Intimate Wife.
Intimate Wife.
The Intimate Wife Instagram. Well, okay, first of all, you started on your own Instagram page.
Yeah.
Making content all about sex. I'm saying it quietly because there are children around.
Get away from the children.
And you ended up like basically like being thrown in Instagram prison, first of all.
Yeah.
So that's insane. And
Then why the hell am I still seeing her?
Instagram prison and Facebook jail are not the same. Get it right.
not grow up talking about sex. And that's, you know, one of the reasons you're doing it is for those people who want to learn, who have that desire.
Huh, maybe they didn't learn about sex growing up because of purity culture? Maybe we could talk about that for a second?
Have a healthy sex life.
People were so mad at me for talking about how I saved my first kiss for marriage. Like, that's been people just like, you're so, you know, damaging and like all this stuff for telling, you know, even sharing that part of your story, you know, like how you shouldn't. And I'm like, that's just my story. I'm not saying other people have to do that. So then when I got married, and then as I've gone, you know, on in marriage and started talking about more about like sex and marriage and stuff, now people are like, like, it's like you can't, don't feel like you can win. You're like, okay, you're mad at me because I talked about saving my first kiss for marriage.
And what is she talking about?
I think...
Like, that's not why people are mad. They might have found it a little cringe. Like, I don't give a shit that you saved your first kiss for marriage. That's your business. But that's not why they are mad. They're mad about this cognitive dissonance that you're clearly going through, trying to talk about how you didn't have sex education because of purity culture, but you won't name drop purity culture or talk bad about it because that would mean that you might be accused of being a deconstructor. And you talk about sex now, but only a specific type of biblical sex. You're not sex positive, but you're acting like people are mad at you. Like, I guess that they are a little bit. I did see a lot of Christians commenting like this is too graphic, but like I didn't see anybody being like saying what she's saying.
No. And I think that it oftentimes what we're seeing here from all of these people, varying degrees, I think the Girl Defined sisters are living in their own reality even more than Paul and Morgan, and certainly more than Dave. But it seems like they just find the criticism they want to see or that's the easiest to address, and then extrapolate that to be the majority of the criticism they get, and that's not. The majority of the criticism you receive is about it's not, no one's criticizing you for saving your first kiss for marriage. We're criticizing you for the judgmental ministry that you built around doing that, and how you've pushed that to other people in ways that are harmful.
And I'm like, they're literally paying money to go through this. There's a need, you know, like they need this and they want this. So you might be over there like complaining, like, how dare you? But there are so many women who have had years of struggle, and it's like, where do you want them to go? They've never felt like they've had anywhere to go. Like, shouldn't we be celebrating that there are more?
Okay, this bothers me because this I feel like there's a bit of a logical fallacy. Because she's like, well, clearly there was a need because people are paying for it. Bethy, you know as well as we do, didn't nobody know what they were paying for? That you sold a product, and you're also you're talking as if this product helped these people. We have no idea. I suspect that this intercourse didn't do a damn thing for anybody who bought it, except maybe the influencers who watched it and made money off of it.
Well, the only thing that I actually learned from the course was like the self-cultivation thing.
Yeah.
Like, everything else is just like, she doesn't even say sex. She says intimacy. She doesn't actually talk about, like, positions. I think she did, like, on an Instagram story. But, like, she doesn't talk about, like, anatomy and physiology and, like, the mental health space that comes with it. Or, like, anything practical. It was just, like, take a bunch of quizzes. Or, like...
Well, and it goes to what she says, where she's like, "Oh, if you talk about sex, then it's too extreme, and if you talk about not having sex, it's too extreme." Yeah, because there's a common denominator here, which is you, Bethy. No one wants to hear about any of this from you.
Has there ever been a reel or post that you've made, and after posting it and getting comments on it, you're like, okay, I went too far on that one?
I post
Shameless.
things.
Shameless.
I post things and I don't think that they're a big deal in the moment.
Yeah.
And then later it turns into a big deal. So
Oh, no.
I posted a reel.
Yes.
And I'll say it and everyone's gonna be like screaming. It was about Thanksgiving.
I knew you were gonna say that one.
We talked about that one.
I literally saw it pop up on my phone and I said, Morgan, look at this.
Okay, I did not think about it. All I said is I asked Dave what his favorite dish was for Thanksgiving, and he said me. And
I can't take this anymore. I mean, good for you, Bethy, but this is hilarious.
I had forgotten about that post. I'm remembering it now.
I have the post in the video. I'll put it up on the screen. Good for you, Bethany.
I did not think it was a big deal. It was just like written on the text. I wasn't doing anything. So I'm like, I wasn't graphic. I just thought this was like a funny kind of spicy married wife joke.
You knew it.
I am genuine. Like,
I believe her that she didn't.
I promise 100%. I didn't, when I posted it, I was not thinking like this one will be a controversial, like this one is gonna, that's what happens. Like people, the ones, I do that sometimes. Yes, I do that. But like with that specific post, I was not doing that.
Yeah.
Like I was not doing that. But there have been posts where I do know I'm being like, poking, whatever. When I posted it, it wasn't a big deal. And then later I was like, wow.
Okay,
like, people really didn't like that.
Still
Is
up?
it still up?
Yeah.
Can we share it right then, just so people can?
Oh, we'll plop it in.
I feel like we got to, and then people can take it how they want.
I really didn't though. That's a genuine. I get people's perspective on it, but like I still.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Paul showed me, and I was like,
"You were shocked?"
Well, my
I was
mind
like, too much visual.
because.
Yeah, Morgan showed it to him and went, "See, other husbands are doing it."
Oh my God.
Stop the brain.
Because you had made a post in the past, and I appreciate a lot of your posts because I'm like I appreciate that she's willing.
He does.
I do. I appreciate that she's willing to destigmatize something for the Christian community that some of them have a really hard time
No,
with.
we're in full support.
We
Some posts, I'm like,
I did not realize how controversial aspects of intimacy could be. Like genuinely, it's not until I started talking about like intimacy and you know different things within intimacy that I realized.
Okay, I'm calling bullshit because I famously have a reel of Bethy's where she's like, I know some of y'all are something. She made a joke about blowjobs being dirty. Because people were clapping back about the toothbrush thing, and she was like, I know where some of y'all's mouths have been. It's like,
see,
maybe you should put your mouth on it.
I don't believe it.
Hey Morgan, it's so funny. You look very short.
Of course I do.
No, can we get it back to back? Can we get it back to back?
I meant.
Yeah, hey Morgan, let me interrupt this interview you're doing to point out how tall this broad is and how short you are.
Paul.
What?
Paul, buddy. I knew that was a sore subject. I knew that was a bad idea. The second
Hey, tall!
How little research do you do going into these 24 hours? Do you even know where, like, what bedroom you're staying in? Or, like, do you just literally pack up your wife and kid and go?
I don't know if they even bring the kid.
You did you look into this at all? The tall thing is like one of 3 things you don't bring up.
To get a thing, we'll have to do this tomorrow night where I'm standing in between you and Kristen.
Oh, yes.
I'm 5'8", guys. I'm
yeah, you're pretty tall.
Hey, I'm 5'7".
5'6".
So me and Morgan got something else in common. And by something else, I mean we're both singers.
If there was like one YouTube channel that you'd say is your favorite, who would it be?
Mostly I listen to Megan Kelly and that's about it.
Okay. Oh, Megan Kelly.
I like her individual.
Don't you dare say anything about Megan Kelly. Don't you dare.
Wow. Okay.
I love Megan Kelly.
I think she's cool.
Massive joke.
Bring it back.
Okay, so what I miss?
First of all, let him speak, Paul. Let him speak, Piccolo.
Let him cook.
Yeah. No, don't cut Dave off. Megan Kelly sucks, and the voice of reason needs to talk now.
Yeah, I'm Team Dave.
Megan Kelly. Fuck all y'all.
So crap.
Oh, crap. Oh, no.
Help her.
Help her.
I need more water.
She should have come to the clinic tonight. Dude, if you would have been in the clinic, that ice bath and the heat. Okay, who's more emotional out of you two? Who is more likely to cry?
Bethany for sure.
But you're a crying man.
I am a very crying man, but
Please make that your Discord bio.
A crying man.
Yeah.
Shout out to my boy Dave, fellow Weepy Boys.
No, but like people, like just because we don't like, we
talk a lot about.
Yeah, and like we've both really have, even though it's really hard, we both are like very passionate about like trusting in the Lord during hard times. And so like Kristen, like having to go through 12 years of infertility and miscarriages and all that, like that's really hard.
Yeah.
Like that like wrecks a lot of people, you know? Or like me in between Davey and Audrey, like 3 miscarriages, and the one that happened like where I was traveling to Ukraine was so traumatic and like so awful, like that sort of stuff. And I'm not complaining about getting married at 30, but like for a lot of single women, like they'll talk about those years before they got married, like how awful and horrible they are and stuff like that. And I think because even though those things were hard for us, we like really find peace and like rest and trust in the Lord. And so it's not like faith altering or like we just are going crazy. Like getting angry at God and stuff has just never made sense.
I have never identified more with anything than Dave shoving tacos in his mouth to avoid having this uncomfortable conversation. Although I will say that is sad that they had so many miscarriages. That's not something I've experienced, and I'm sure it's pretty world altering.
I'm not gonna say they haven't gone through things and that they haven't struggled. Everyone has. It's just I don't like how y'all responded to your struggle by deciding you had the secret sauce formula and then judging everybody who didn't use it. That's all.
I kind of asked this because it's definitely happened with Morgan and I, and does happen with us. People online like to decide which one they're going to agree with more than villainize the other person. And I was kind of reading comments on a video and I saw, I hope Bethany's husband finds happiness.
Oh, I've heard that one before.
That's been our story. I hope Morgan finds happiness.
Yes.
And when you hear it, freedom, when you hear that so many times, it can start to...
Oh yeah, sometimes I feel
you.
Sometimes I feel a little sorry for myself. Yeah, 100%. It's not.
Expound on that if you don't.
It ain't king energy, but it's something.
It's not what?
It's not king energy.
Okay.
It's not.
Do you have any comments about that?
I don't think. Okay.
We've had shitty comments.
Yeah.
People get mad that you're even on the channel. People get mad that we interrupt each other. But people also, say like couple goals. So you can't really help what people comment. And sometimes I do think that they are inferring things that aren't there. But I do think that this narrative didn't just come out of nowhere. And I'm not saying that, I know these people's marriages more than they do. But people are picking up on body language and little comments and maybe roasts that were a little too mean, or they're picking up on the stuff that you have already stated, such as, the need for biblical submission and like having to have these strict gender roles and all that stuff. So I think they're picking up on something. Maybe they're not getting it exactly accurate, but I mean, clearly it's affecting them. Like they see these things, and Paul likes to lean into it. Like Paul recently, they did a video where it was like assumptions about us. And one of them was like, we assume that you don't like Morgan or something like that. And it's like, clearly it is affecting you to the point where you're drawing attention to it. And everybody's going to react in their own way to, mean comments or whatever. I just think it's interesting because I do think that Paul really, really cares about how he comes across, and he really cares about what people think about him. And if you're going to be really obsessed with that, this is not a good line of work for you. And I say that as somebody who struggles with that every single day. And I'm trying to overcome it. I'm on a self-esteem journey. But it's just really interesting because it clearly is affecting Paul, because otherwise he wouldn't have brought it up. And this is a good moment of bonding, I like to think. You know, like I said earlier, this is their, like, for fundies, like, this is probably a very exciting collab. And especially because we have worked with other YouTubers and other YouTube couples in person, and it is completely just surreal to see your friends in person, but also, like, you know, see how the sausage is made, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think that here, once again, I feel like Paul is drawing a line that's not there, and it bothers me here, especially because, as you said, we have a little experience in this very particular arena, because he says, oh, well, you know, it always seems like they gravitate towards one person more than the other, and it's, okay, well, your sample size here is 2, bud. And I'm going to use you, Paul, like, they're not doing it just because viewing audiences naturally gravitate towards this one person more than the other, and that's how it always works. They're talking that way, Paul, because of what you put in those videos.
You called your wife loose.
You
implied that she was.
You imply these things. You approach the world the way you do, and people have made judgments on it based on material you gave them to judge. That's what it was there for. And we talk about it from our own perspective. Yeah, I've had some people say, I like Jen's videos better. I don't like how James is too loud. He's opinionated. They don't say I put her down. They don't say I don't like her. I take that, I would take very seriously.
If anything, they get mad that I'm talking over you.
In the meantime, I get a bunch of comments, and bless y'all's soul, it makes me feel so good talking about all the googly eyes I throw at you every time we're on screen together. They don't talk about me that way. They don't talk about, and I say this because it's the same over here with the couple across the table. They picked Bethany out, and the viewers found this dynamic because it's what you all put on screen. Not because, people just, when it's a couple online, they're always going to pick one to like more than the other.
They think that people hate them because they're Christian, not because they're actually very mean and judgmental.
But it's also, it's also this false equivalence. Like, that's just what people do. That's not what people do, Paul. You made those judgments materialize.
Yeah.
You know? And for what it's worth, when they said I talked over Jen too much, they were right, and I tried to stop talking over so damn much.
I don't know if I'm going to be cured of my talking over James, but it's a journey.
It's
King energy.
Already feeling sorry for myself, and then hearing one of those and be like, "You're damn right."
Wow.
I got it, man.
Well, but that's a scary thought for me if I were to think, like, Morgan's over there thinking...
It's possible for someone to feel...
You know, I just realized, from this perspective, it kind of feels like we're the third couple at this dinner party.
What if?
And we're just sitting there awkwardly being like, well, we're not Christian. You guys knew that, so... Okay.
It was a little weird that you made me say grace, but rude, whatever.
But,
I'll do it.
I closed my eyes. I did the thing. Well, yeah, it's just, I don't
Can I get some hot sauce, Bethany? Oh, you don't have any?
I don't agree.
Right.
Can you reach it?
It's awkward.
I've asked like 3 times.
I'll be like, I don't like Waterloo.
Yeah.
Can I get a Diet Pepsi?
It's all sparkling in here. Everything's sparkling.
Just kidding. I don't like Diet Pepsi.
I swear to God, they use Waterloo in the soup.
Feel bad for them. Feel sorry for themselves.
Have you felt that way when you get all these messages of? No, let's be real. Like, of messages of you, Morgan. What is it? I hope Morgan finds happiness, and that's said in so many different ways.
I would say that I've...
Please say no. Please say I'm being real. I hope these aren't sticking with you.
We're going to have a check-in.
Like, Morgan can do so much better, that type of stuff.
No. None of that stuff is... I've never been...
Real life. To me, though, in all reality, like, that is a little bit scary. It's a little bit scary because it's not our friends close to us or people from church. It literally can be like multitudes online, sending DMs, commenting, making videos. So it's just the thought of that in circulation.
The stuff online, I think the part that gets like the comments and all of the messages, like I'm the villain, you know. And I think the only time it gets frustrating for me is if just being honest, is like when he's like, it starts interacting with them, and sometimes I feel like starts like, oh, like they're actually really nice people and all of this, and almost like it feels like it's now like them against me.
And it's less of like he's not upset or mad at me or anything. It's just more like, oh, we should be sympathetic. But at the end of the day, it's like, in some of these cases, I feel like.
What did I tell you? Dave is watching Fundy Fridays. He's a Jennonite. He's subscribed.
Dave told you somebody had a point, and you ain't never let it go.
Ugh.
Nope.
Like these people really do want they do want to see our relationship fall apart. Sure. Even though they might be like, we hope you and Bethany stay together. They don't really hope that.
Right.
And that's kind of become apparent with a lot of these people that it's not. And so I think that's frustrating because I really don't believe they have pure motives or pure intentions or really care about either of us.
Right.
And so to me, that's frustrating if there is, and this just be like being real. I want to feel like my man is like standing up for me and like he is like, you know, forget them. They're like, why are they coming after my girl? And so when you're like compassionate toward them, it's kind of like, how could you? Yeah.
So when Dave is being Christ-like, you don't like that? I'm just joking. I know what she means. And I've like had you, stand up for me before. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of a Band-Aid.
Yeah, it makes me like I feel bad. Like I choose to, but it's hard.
Yeah, so in order to deal with that, because I don't want to, one, compromise my own integrity by dropping the fact that I think that a lot of these people are not as evil as sometimes we talk about on the one hand, but I also do want to be a very strong rock for Bethany and stand up for her as her husband and all that. So typically my solution has been just to not talk, not have those ongoing conversations.
It's hard
but
because
we do have different views about this.
I guess it's hard for me if I feel like, okay, you're building relationships, man, woman, I don't care, with people who hate me. I mean, it's like I can imagine if I'm in your shoes, like it's got to be nice to be the one that they really like, and then
Bethy just acknowledged that we all like Dave.
I feel like we're hearing like an atom bomb of a conversation.
Yeah.
And they're just being very quiet because it's like, oh, so Dave not only thinks they're okay, but he's making friends with some of these people.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I mean, to be fair, I can understand from Kristen's, that was Freudian, from Bethy's perspective, that probably does feel horrible. But I'm also Team Dave, so I'm like,
And once again, I'm going to say once again, some people told me I talked over Jen in some of our early videos, and they're absolutely right. So maybe it's just stuff you don't want to hear, and maybe some stuff that Dave knew he didn't have to take anymore.
Yeah.
if you're feeling frustrated at me for some reason, like, yeah, you are kind of right. It's like, I can imagine if I were in their shoes, whatever, it's got to feel a little bit good to be the one that they like.
Yeah, I think they kind of see, from some of the videos I watched, I think they kind of see you as more progressive in your views and more open-minded, where they would they would look at Bethany and be like, Bethany looks at the Bible and she...
Dave?
Officially, I'm going to say mine. Now, 2 people in this family can dunk.
Claims what she sees to her following, and it's pretty black and white to her. And Dave is over here kind of looking like the mediator. Like he's kind of coming our way. He doesn't see things so black and white. He's a very nuanced man. I think Dave could come our way. They're kind of, I think, rooting for you when they feel like with Bethany, like, she's probably never going to, but maybe we could get Dave. So I can see how that would sting for Bethany in particular, of like these people, maybe they're not all horrible, but they're not looking out for our marriage.
Yeah.
Well,
I feel like they would like to see me. They would love to see you leave me and go off and do something, and they'd love for my life to just they don't just dislike my message. Yeah, they don't like me.
That's largely. I think that's largely true.
Yeah. So it's not. It doesn't feel good for me to see you trying to I don't know, build these relationships as they're proactively telling you, we want you to have a happy marriage, but we would be, we understand if you need to Leave.
Because
Yeah,
that was what
leave.
they were doing with Morgan.
Yeah.
They were saying suddenly they really liked Morgan. They were bashing us for
yeah.
they were bashing us for 2 years.
Yes.
And then the video gets made about me of being emotionally abusive, and then suddenly they love Morgan and they're saying, Morgan, how much do you need for me to pay you to get out from him, like get away from him? And it's like, oh,
Wait.
Suddenly you're really supportive.
Money?
We could have maybe utilized that.
But how much money?
Listen, I really think this conversation should be private. Like, because I've had conversations, with other YouTubers, and we talk about this kind of stuff, like haters and comments bothering us and etc. I could never be that vulnerable to have this conversation on camera.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Is this brave? Is this attention seeking? What do you think this is?
I mean,
it could be both. But just like, I'm very uncomfortable watching this, so I can only imagine.
Here's what I'll say. You can have a low quality production, which is what I think this is, that's still, sorry, it's just, you can have a low quality production that still, like I said, drops an atom bomb conversation. Like if the camera's set up and it records something incredible, then that's what it is. And I think this really is a very, especially uniquely for you and me in particular, like I said, as the third couple at this hypothetical table, it is kind of interesting to hear them discussing this and be able to relate to some things, but also be able to patently call out some other things as just incorrect.
This is wild.
Yeah.
I'll
give you credit, Paul Morgan. Your 24 hours, it delivered something that was
we're
must
watching
watch.
it.
It wasn't because y'all did a good job or of your efforts. It was because you happened to set the camera up at the right time.
Send me all the money.
But suddenly they're really friendly with you.
Get out.
Because
No,
they
it's still stuck. Send more.
Just a little bit more. It's so true though. Yeah, like out of nowhere.
Yeah, and it was all so, for me, it was so clearly, I was just like, you don't give one hoot or holler about me.
I have
You love the drama.
I think they love the drama. I think that's a part of it here.
I want to kind of. There's so much that could be said about
This is a lot.
I can see, the people who have made videos about us. Cody Combe, he kind of started this all off with like Girl Define. His video has like 33 million views or whatever. I hope he has a wonderful life. I hope he gets married and has kids, and like I hope he makes lots of money, Like my kids will be very tall, your kids will be very short. But seriously, like I have no desire to like get on some channel and be like, turn Cody Combe down.
And I totally believe you.
Agree. But so the point is that I feel like there are some people in life, whether they're a fan or a hater or whatever, they approach social media or people they see online, and the ones they disagree with, they like really wish ill on them, and they hope and then there are other people who don't do that. And so it's like, my thing is like, the people who are actively on these hater channels or on these Reddits or, it's like, they have that gene of like wanting to see people like go down, wanting to see them demonetized, proactively coming against like their sponsors and trying to get them
I
shut
think
down.
there's a lot of that energy there, but I don't necessarily think it's unique to that group. It is conceivable, I'm not saying that they all do, but it is conceivable that the haters are willing to tell you things about yourself that nobody else is willing to tell you, unless you have the type of people in your life that will call you out. And a lot of us surround.
Girl, don't I fucking know that shit. Let me tell you. They pick the most fucking insecurity that I have, and they will fucking pinpoint that shit. Woo! Dave's speaking truth.
At the same time, that worries me a little because he also seems to, in my opinion, be kind of treading into that like black pill territory where he's like, the haters will tell you the things you really don't want to know about yourself. And it's like, okay, are you just going in there and digital self-harming, Dave, because you are struggling with self-perception and self-worth. That I could see as a bit
Well,
concerning.
you know what, Dave? I'll tell you this. Most people do like you, so you can rest easy.
I'm gonna tell you this
that.
right now, Dave. We would have entertained y'all a hell of a lot better than these folks.
I don't want Bethany in my house.
That's fair.
Surround ourselves with people who will not.
But I feel like we are wise and we make sure that we have people in our lives to call us out when it's necessary, even if it's one another calling each other out and you two calling each other out.
Did anybody ever call you out for cutting her off before a hater?
Christians, followers.
Yeah, Christians would call you out. Well, there you go.
Several of our like solid followers will be like, "Paul, stop cutting Morgan off."
In general, you shouldn't take advice from people who don't wish you well.
Right.
However, if you have integrity, you should be able to. You don't necessarily have to pay attention to haters, but you should be able to look past the fact that they're haters if they do happen to say something.
Of course, yes, I agree. If they say something that's true,
Well, I would agree with you, Dave, that even though we have people that would speak into our lives, like we can have blind spots, and sometimes because of the communities that we're around and the people that support us, the blind spots can linger for a while, and sometimes it might take someone who's very far removed from that community to challenge us. Could that be someone off of Reddit or a criticism hate video? Potentially, but in the same vein, man, I really don't want to be spending much time paying attention to those.
I don't think it's worth, I think that, I wish that y'all would more befriend people rather than choosing to view them as the kind of the bad ones or whatever. I do think that there is a road to that. But I think that you have decided to sort of play that us versus them game. I've started down the path of like befriending and like understand, and I'm like, okay, these people aren't just sitting there like with some sort of scary, they're just people, and
are you directing this at their channel and our channel?
I'm directing it at,
which is fine.
I'm directing it at all y'all to the degree that you want to just kind of write off whole groups of the internet, and I get it.
Well, Dave is woke. He has pronouns now. The blue
think-
hair dye is in the mail.
I didn't think he was gonna be the hero we needed.
Dave!
At least in this video. I love how much of this video has looked like a 3-on-1 panel interview, where the three of them are just asking him questions and staring daggers at him while he's going, nah, maybe those comments are so mean, you should listen to them. That's him. That's what Dave is doing this whole time.
Dave knows what's up.
Dave is acknowledging that, hey, maybe we were judgmental assholes with room for growth, and we're lucky these people called us out. And if you actually take the time to talk to the fucking haters, as you call them, you might learn something. I think that's what
This
Dave
is
said.
like woke for me. Like, I'm joking when I say woke, but like, this is like good advice, I would almost say, because like I've gotten really worked up about haters and like talked to my therapist about it for hours at a time, like and I do think it would behoove mean good or bad?
It would benefit you.
It would behoove me to let some of that shit go. And
I mean, he's not using the words I would use, but he's highlighting something I think is important, which is he's saying that if you have a stable sense of self and you are able to maturely and reasonably engage with criticism, then you should be able to read comments from people who may or may not be haters and objectively evaluate that information to see, oh, this is something I need to work on, or that's ridiculous. That's not true, and that I don't need to worry about. And he's saying that you don't have to make it you're wrong because we're enemies and you're just a hater. And when you start writing people off as haters, you're actually missing out on valuable chances for self-improvement and chances to grow. And I think that Dave, and I mean, this is me telling tales out of school again, but I feel like Dave is sitting here kind of getting frustrated with three people who doggedly refuse to grow from a lot of feedback that's already there and available to them.
Yeah.
And so that's how I feel about it. And I'm not trying to tell you how your dinner went, Dave, but I'm just saying once the tacos ran out, he started to get real fucking...
He just needed some protein.
Don't get me wrong. I too, Dave, have shoveled tacos into my mouth at a family dinner to avoid uncomfortable conversations about Megyn Kelly. So don't worry.
That it's personal. I get that you've received more hate than I personally have.
I think too for like literal mental health, like
Yeah.
to try and bridge the gap between the Redditors who
Yeah.
literally send me death threats and tell me they are praying that my baby dies in my womb. Like, I just don't have time
That's
to
even,
try
yeah,
and
that's
bridge
very
that gap.
wicked.
But
no, that's wicked, but that is not. That's not everything.
It's not indicative.
Yeah.
It's not indicative of every Redditor.
So, yeah, I think the Reddit subthreads are, from my limited interaction or understanding, is full of people who are reacting against all kinds of stuff that both has happened to them and that they have created in their own lives. And the reason why I'm like this is because I am like that in plenty of ways. I'm not willing to just write off whole groups of people because they say unkind things.
So I agree. I'm not writing them off, but I don't think the like online space is the place to do that. When I meet people, which I've met plenty of them in real life, they'll come and say hi or whatever. I like in person, absolutely. I would love to talk to you. I would love to build a relationship with you, but it's just too hard. That's why I think you're right about like people when you're online, people, the lovers and the haters, they don't really know you that well. And that's why I think the biggest impact often comes from our real life relationships.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm constantly through Girl Define encouraging people to have real life relationships, get involved in church, all of that. But if I were to meet any Redditors in real life and they wanted to actually have a genuine conversation, like I am absolutely there for that. Like I hope to be.
Do you think that's real? Chat, is this real?
This is something that I see, this is something I see from a lot of these types of channels where they're like, I'd be totally willing to have this conversation. And it's like, it's because you think you can schmooze and bulldoze in one-on-one.
In real life, you think that you can...
You think you'll be able to charm your way out of it. I don't think that that's what you realize you're saying. I think you really I think Bethy earnestly believes that she's like, oh, it's completely different in one-on-one. It's because in one-on-one, all of those like secondary factors that aren't the actual substance of what you're saying, those come into play much more. Social niceties.
Mm-hmm.
And you're relying on those, and when those, and don't get me wrong, the internet and its ability to make everyone anonymous does create some terrible results, just like she was saying. Death threats, threatening people's babies, saying that type of shit. Don't do that. And it should go without saying. Don't do that to anyone, no matter how much you disagree with them online.
Because, I think Morgan was kind of tiptoeing around the idea of boundaries, but of course that's like a scary woke word to her, because absolutely, if somebody is saying horrific things to you, you don't need to give them the time of day. You can just block their asses. But I think a lot of people are sending her normal messages, and she's writing those off too. But at the same time, if people are attacking you, you don't want to talk to them, and you don't want to encourage that behavior.
And this is why this is why we always say, don't accost people, don't threaten people, don't send these types of messages, because number one, it ain't nice and it ain't got any place in these conversations, but number two, it actually shuts down a lot of potential for growth. Ironically, it hinders people, because if you sent your death threat, well now, she's going to ignore the next several days worth of messages, which is reasonable because she's scared or nervous. Yeah. And you may have blocked out somebody who had something very important to say that might have changed how she looked at the world because you had to pop off and be horrible. Not you. You all are great, but you get what I'm saying.
Be able to have conversations with people who've made videos about us. Like I hope to be able to sit down and do stuff like that.
Somebody has to go first. Somebody has to be the first one to start a process like that.
I agree with you, Bethany, in that in-person, face-to-face conversations with those people who actually want to try and understand where we're coming from. Like we've had conversations with haters who I've sat down with people face-to-face, and they've been genuine of, I do want to know where you're coming from. I don't agree with it, and I've maybe commented some nasty things or whatever, just really pushing back.
I mean, I'm really bad about that. I cussed Lawson Bates out, but he didn't reply.
Don't strike
or whatever. But I do genuinely want to know
where you stand, and those conversations I think are very good and
For
healthy.
sure.
And we walk away still completely disagreeing, but like being like, you're human, I'm human.
Yeah.
Does your
Respect.
right. Does your concept of them, you kind of just answered it, but your concept of them sounds like changes. In other words, they're no longer just a, butthole 335.
You say butthole?
No.
They're now something more than that.
These people are not just, and again, I don't mean every single one, but a good chunk of them are not just, criticizers. They have inflicted very heavy, amounts of pain.
I agree with
on their, I just know for a fact, on them, on us.
Like ruining opportunities, trying to actually, make it impossible for, me to even, be in that space or have any success in that space.
All of that is absolutely ridiculous, and people that do that I think are idiots.
I thought this was the free market.
Yeah.
I thought that if there was no demand, you guys would stop giving us the supply.
Well, here's the other thing, too. I'm going to say right now, you're like, oh, they're threatening us with taking away our opportunities. These haters can't take away nothing. What they're doing is informing the brands you work with of who you are.
You have to really screw up to lose out on a sponsorship. Let me just say that from behind-the-scenes info.
See, I want to point out, when we talk to sponsors, when we set this up, we talk about politics, we talk about religion. It's all controversial. Sometimes there's violence. And we tell them up front, because some products don't want to be associated with that. Mm-hmm. And if you're like, oh, this was an opportunity, well, if they canceled your contract, Bethy, your opportunity was based on a lie, because you didn't tell them who you were. Mm-hmm. One of these haters reached out to this brand and told them who they were actually working with, and they decided they didn't like it. Mm-hmm. No hater took that away from you. That brand could have sat there. What's the stakes in the mail? I'm sure they've heard everything there is to hear about Allie Beth, and they still sign her up. It is not the hater's fault if a brand cancels your sponsorship. Take it up with the brand and take it up with your views.
For doing that, when they do that.
See, it feels good to hear you say
that. That feels nice. That does feel nice, seriously.
Yes, I'm very sorry that you have gone through that you have faced that. That's really rough.
They sent us a chocolate penis.
What?
That's why I don't have a P.O. box.
Yeah. For all of y'all who say, oh, we want to send you nice things.
For every one of you that wants to send me a Precious Moments, there's about 100 Christians who want to send me, bees in the mail.
We're going to get Bibles covered in ricin. That's what we're going to end up with. And don't send chocolate penises either. It's close enough to sexual harassment.
I just want to know if they sent it during the winter or the summer, because it would have melted.
I want to know if they ate it.
They probably did.
Did y'all throw it away? Paul, which part did you eat?
It's not gay if you eat the balls.
Which part of the chocolate penis did you eat, Paul? It's okay. It's not gay, dude. It's candy.
We did not eat it.
We melted it down to chocolate fondue. I think this might have been the deepest conversation that we've had in a while.
It does kind of take the life out of you. It's like,
that's heavy.
I feel pretty good.
I think it felt therapeutic to me. Genuinely.
I really love your energy. He jumped in the cold plunge.
It's absolutely horrible.
He's up for stuff. He did the little
cartwheel
thing.
What is happening?
Y'all hearing this?
You've wanted more friends like this.
Guys, Bethany, girl defined, part of girl defined, half of girl defined. It's been so much fun getting to hang out with you guys and just learn more about you all, humanize you. I feel like we definitely did that. How can the family support what you are doing with Girl Defined, with the Intimate Wife, and beyond? She works smart, all of it.
Thanks, family. Y'all are so cool. If you want to join our sisterhood, we would love that. You can join our podcast, The Girl Defined Show. That's like the main place that we are right now, which is awesome.
Nice.
Episode 2 was one for the books.
Now, breathe in all your anger and frustration towards your father.
I forgive you.
Wait, I'm getting y'all's feet. Sabrina.
I never hug a man twice.
Okay, that's funny.
That's gonna be my Discord.
Never hug a man twice.
I've never hugged a man twice.
Originally, we wrote some like crazy like call out like it was like a good ass monologue against Paul because I thought that this was gonna be. Maybe I'm a little self-obsessed. I thought they were gonna talk about me more, so I had to be like, "Well, Paul, I'll have you know that." Well, yeah, it didn't.
But a lot of what I know,
very reasonable.
But a lot of what I wrote in there, I think, still stands. Particularly about, and I'm talking to Paul here, and Bethy. Obviously, it's technically y'all's episode, so I should probably talk to Bethy. But y'all, Bethy and Paul are two.
I walked away from this thing. I'm obsessed with Dave.
Dave is great. Dave is for another video. Paul and Bethy, maybe y'all need to listen to him because here's the thing: there's a version of this where the haters like you. There's a version of this where you're accepting and non-judgmental and friendly, and honestly, your views may not even have to change all that much. They would have to change somewhat, but not all that much. But you are judgmental. You do try to speak for God and try to use that language to tell other people that they are living incorrect, sinful lives. The people who push back against you, people like us, people like Rachel Oates and Jordan McKay and all of them, they're not doing it because we're haters. We're not doing it because we're haters. We're doing it because you are saying things that are harming people.
And we're trying to put out a counter nice message to people because I care about them and I don't want them to suffer because of the way that they were born.
And yeah, we use your product and your brand to make that point. You put it out there. You put your opinions out there. You leave them there to hurt other people. I don't think it's unfair for your opinions to be judged in kind. And that's all we're doing. I'm tired of the language of hater. I get that some people are like that, but I also think that everybody at that table, although some of you were showing it more than others, has the power of godly discernment. And you should be able to tell, just like Dave said, you can look at something that's evil, a death threat, just unnecessary criticism, cruel things about appearance and superficial stuff, and you can look at that and say, I can discard that. There are some things that are being written by people you call haters that's some shit you need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. So, all right. Now for the real conclusion. If Girl Defined, well, mostly Bethy, had their way, every man, woman, and child would be a God-fearing Christian. And that's the problem. It would be one thing if Girl Defined were just preaching to the choir, but that's just it. They're trying to preach to the entire world. Creating God's kingdom on earth requires getting others to believe in ways that you do. That's what it means to evangelize. The problem is, Girl Defined's message can be downright evil sometimes. And their reach is farther than even they realize. Yes, they have hate watchers, but for every one of those is an equally vulnerable, fundy teenager whose only recreation for the week is to watch these two losers spout off their hateful beliefs. I guess I should say that their main fan base is teenage girls and, Lydia Plath. Fundies love to say that we take them out of context. But what's the added context? That you're a bigot? You guys proudly proclaim that you are anti-homosexuality, anti-transgender rights, anti-reproductive rights, and that people who commit what you call sexual sin are depraved and worthless without God. So if that's the context, it doesn't really seem to be making your situation any better. Girl Defined tells their audience that Target is using the woke agenda to groom your kids into being trans. They believe that humans are inherently sinful and sexually broken. They downplay victim testimonies in the name of protecting Christianity, and only they are allowed to change their mind about certain beliefs, and they shame and judge others who dare to examine their own faith. They are a part of a political movement that aims to take away your rights and legally discriminate against others. Girl Defined is not just some cringy Christian sideshow to laugh at, although they are cringy. They are actively dangerous, and it doesn't seem like they are going to get any better. If anything, I imagine they're going to keep doubling down and getting even more offensive. So, here's until next time, I guess. Girl Defined. Not just the gift that keeps on giving, it's the gift that the store won't take back even when you bring the receipt. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I sure had fun making it. I originally was like, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, and then I just opened up Google Docs, I turned on some music, some Linkin Park, and I just rage typed. And then later I would find clips to fill in whatever I was saying. Girl Defined is always interesting to talk about because they do change, but like not in a significant way. And as my channel grows, as I get older, as they get older, as like the, you know, world reacts to their content, like it's just become this monster. Like it's really nice to know that there are people who are giving a counter narrative to what they're doing. It's really comforting. It's just wild. It's just wild to think about them and what they're up to. Like when I started 5 years ago, I never thought that it would be Bethy's orgasm show. You know what I mean? Like she's out here talking about shitting and farting and squirting. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just never in a million years thought that that's what would be coming out of Bethy's mouth. I also, like, no matter how many times I do this, like, I'm gonna leave stuff out, and it always bothers me, but I have to remember that, you know, James always tells me this, like, people don't know the video that you didn't make. Like, if I make a mistake or if I leave something out, like, people don't know. Only I know, you know. So, I'll definitely be updating you. I'll make more videos about Girl Defined, and yeah, it's just been wild. It feels like more serious each time I do it. Like the stakes are higher, especially like politically with what's going on and like culturally, like there's a lot to take on and a lot of lives that are being affected by this kind of thing. So I try to keep that in perspective. Yeah, check out the resources in the info box below. Most of them are from Reddit. Shout out Reddit. Always holding it down. I guess I didn't get to talk about this at the beginning because I just kind of jumped in, but we did a rebrand recently. We have a new intro, new music. Check out my Instagram. I feature like both of the artists that worked on that. We have a website, fundyfridays.net, because somebody domain squatted us and took fundyfridays.com. But it's also like funny because like it's kind of retro. .net, like who has .net? We are going to be changing a few things around. I can't tell you until it's done, but just be on the lookout. But yeah, check out my link. Go if you go to the website and you click on articles and podcasts, it just links to my link tree, which has all those things. So been in some articles recently. Good shit. Remember to consensually smash that like and subscribe button. Remember to follow me on social media. And if you want to support us financially, we have Patreon and YouTube memberships. They do the exact same thing. You get access to behind-the-scenes videos, a link to the Discord where we do watch parties. We try to do them every Monday. And I guess the only difference is on YouTube, you get, like, your name is a different color in the chat, and you get, like, special emojis. So it's up to you. Or you don't have to subscribe to any of those things. You can just catch me on YouTube, which is also fun. I love you guys so much. I care about you immensely. And when I get scared of people like Paul, which I know it's hard to believe, I get scared too. I get anxious. I'm not as confident as I appear to be on camera. I remember that I have you guys and that you guys have my back and that you also have been bullied, like, by people like Paul. So you understand, but yeah, just can't thank you guys enough for financially supporting me, emotionally supporting me, becoming like this community online. Like, it's just beautiful. You guys make my life worth living. Is that uplifting or is that sad? Guess we'll never know. So anyway, I will see you guys soon. We're on a journey when it comes to upload schedule, okay? Because I thought we were going to do 3 a month, and that hasn't been sustainable. So we may or may not have a break week in between this video and the next, but we'll just have to wait and see. I love you guys sincerely. Be good, drink water, and God bless.
Anyway, rabbit trail. So all of that to say, I think that my
Good rabbit there. Good rabbit.
boing, 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 bringing it back.